Yeah, very good morning to you. Full team on a Monday morning, the 7th of November. My name is Evan Jansen. This is Elvis President and, of course, Killa Mahamate with us today. We're also live on YouTube right now, so you can watch us, of course, anywhere in the world live on our YouTube channel. Today we're dealing with the issues that face or plague domestic work here in South Africa. Some interesting pictures, sort of come into the spotlight over the last week or so. So we're asking you today on our question of the day, do you think domestic workers in South Africa get a fair deal? That's our question today. We're asking a different question of us on our poll today, because we're also dealing with the legal drinking age in our second hour.
You know, we believe that we are a hard-drinking nation, Eben, and the question that we pose to you, should the drinking age limit be increased to 21 in South Africa? As you know, currently it's at 18, so you can drive, but you can't drink as yet. So. Just
over 100 votes, and I'm surprised. 71% say yes, the age limit should be increased. That's a very interesting take.
And the question is also, even you can vote also at the age of 18, but you can't drink. So should it then go to 21 because we are a hard-drinking nation? That will probably reduce our drinking in the country? I don't know.
We're the worst binge drinkers on the planet. That's according to UN studies. But, of course, there's a lot of cricket going on for South Africa today. Kendall, we're on the verge of something special at the WACA in Perth, aren't we?
100%. Kagiso Rabada has been absolutely phenomenal. In fact, the entire team has been extremely it's been superb in their performance, putting up first a 539 run chase and then ripping through their batting order.
There you have live pictures coming in, 8 for 341. There's still 32 overs left in the day for South Africa to pick up 2 wickets. Of course, the attack is very depleted, the South African attack. Dale Steyn is injured, and of course the other 2 fast bowlers, they bowled for more than a day already. So tough work still ahead to win that game, but Kendall will give us another update shortly. Right now, time for us to take a look at the morning's news.
Water has been released from the Sterkfontein Dam in the Free State from today to supply Gauteng with water. The African National Congress will hold its regular National Working Committee meeting later this morning, with the Public Protector's State of Capture report set to feature high on the agenda. And in a major boost for Hillary Clinton's presidential ambitions, the FBI says it will not bring criminal charges against the former Secretary of State. Those are all your headlines. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning, Kendall. It was a busy weekend.
Absolutely. As Monday mornings go, this is a good one, especially since we're about to celebrate something special happening out at the Perth WACA. Now, good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in sports today.
You seem convinced about the father. That could be gone. Yes, he's given him.
The Proteas on the verge of a famous victory at the WACA after setting the hosts an improbable 539 run chase, and Kagiso Rabada rips through the batting lineup.
Twala denied by Ngobeni, and there it is. Free State Stars join Cape Town City.
Free State Stars beat Kaizer Chiefs 6-5 on penalties after a 2-all draw in their last 8 Telkom Knockout Cup match in Durban.
You can almost feel the Liverpool fans on the cop purring with this performance. Firmino, very strong. He got there first. For a moment, the Chief was on it.
Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool ascend to the top of the English Premier League after a resounding 6-1 thrashing of Watford. All this and more, of course, I've got for you later on the Sports Bulletin. But for now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Water from the Sterkfontein Dam in the Free State will be released into the Vaal Dam from today. The dam just outside Harrismith will prevent the Vaal Dam's level from dropping below 25%. The operation is set to begin in about an hour's time. Well, it's almost around about that time. The Department of Water and Sanitation says that the dwindling Vaal Dam is forcing it to dip into its water reserves. The Vaal Dam is Gauteng's major water supply. The Sterkfontein Dam is the province's last line of defense against taps running dry. The reserve dam was opened more than 36 years ago. Water restrictions have been tightened in a number of municipalities amid the persistent drought. Now, for more on the release of the water from the Sterkfontein Dam, we now cross live to our reporter, Asina Gori, who's on the scene. A very good morning to you, Asina. And can you tell us, has the water been released as yet?
Good morning, Elvis. It's a very chilly morning here in Sterkfontein in Kwakwa, Free State. And we're seconds away from the water being released from behind me, and it's expected to leave here in about 20,000 liters per second from the dam behind me to Natal's to Nuwe Jarespruit, and then it will then flow into Wilde River and then into the Vaal River, and then eventually into your taps there in Gauteng. And what is expected is that it will continue till late in December. Hopefully by then rain will fall, and the levels in the Vaal Dam as well as the Sterkfontein Dam will then be up again, and hopefully we will deter the looming water crisis that we are facing at the moment. But to talk to me more on that is the Water and Sanitation Department spokesperson, Sputnik Ratau. Good morning and thank you for joining us. Can you tell us, how did we get to this space that we are right now, where we're looking for water from various different sources and our taps are running dry?
Well, we have to remember that this is a hydrological drought that we are facing, and therefore it is something that would have happened cyclically, and that is why we are here. But also, I think the main thing is that this is a reminder for all of us as a nation that we need to remember always to use water sparingly and wisely, because South Africa, in effect, receives, even under normal circumstances, less than world average rainfall. So we are not a water-rich country. We need to always remember that it is a scarce resource that we need to conserve and use sparingly all the time.
Can you explain to us the process of the water from this dam to the Vaal Dam? How long will it take to reach there, and for how long will the water then be used?
Well, the water being released today will take between 11 and 15 days to get to the Vaal Dam itself. And obviously, we are looking at the process happening between now and the end of December. And that will imply that we will be releasing incrementally from now until the beginning of December, when we will increase it to about 70 cubic meters per second. And then from there, we will go back down towards 20 and ultimately close down at the end of December, hoping that in the meantime we shall receive sufficient rainfall for us to be able to recover the Vaal River system.
Thank you, Sputnik. That was the Water and Sanitation spokesperson. But we've just been told that the water has been begun trickling down from the Sterkfontein Dam into the Vaal Dam. As you can see down below, you can see the flow through the sluice gates very slowly. We're told that it will build up in pressure by tomorrow, and we'll be able to see it flow a lot more by then. And the numbers are going to be going through in increments. So it will start with 20 cubic meters, and then by next week to 70 cubic, and then back down in December to about 20 cubic meters.
Hasina, tell us now, as we stand there, I can see the water trickling down. How long will it take for this process to be complete?
They're hoping that it will carry on for 2 months, so from today till the end of December, where it will almost 200,000 liters of water will be released from this dam, which is a backup dam for the Vaal system, and then it will fill that dam up. We were told that this dam has the capacity to fill the Vaal Dam 1.5 times. We know that we're currently facing a drought, and we've had lower than expected rainfall. It's the lowest since 1905, and we need so much more water to fill the dam and to ensure that Gauteng residents do have water. We know that in Gauteng, 50,000 liters per second is used, in the province, and we need this water to ensure that our taps do not run dry.
Hasina, thank you so much for your time and joining us.
Down by 0.5.
Yes. So sorry, I lost you there for a second there,
Luckily, our dam levels are down by 0.5 level.
Well, it looks like we've lost Sina there with that connection, but she'll give us an update a little bit later as to where we stand. Coming back now to Johannesburg. In fact, EFF members have started arriving in Newcastle ahead of the court appearance of their leader, Julius Malema. Now, he stands accused of incitement to commit trespassing for calling on people to occupy vacant land. The comments were made in Madadeni in Newcastle ahead of the local government elections. The EFF leader faces a similar charge for remarks made in Bloemfontein in 2014. Now, that matter will be in court next week. Malema says the charges are part of a political campaign against him. His party has also made a call on the National Director of Public Prosecution, Sean Abrams, to resign. Abrams defended in Parliament the decision to charge Malema under the Riotous Assemblies Act of 1956.
It's a law that is being used to silence us, let alone our freedom of expression and our freedom of speech, just the basic fundamental claim of the liberation struggle. Land must be restored to its rightful owners, and those are black Africans. Until such a time, we're not going to be silenced.
Well, we're going to go now live to our reporter on the scene there, Eldrin St. Pierre, to give us an update. Eldrin, a very good morning to you and welcome. Eldrin, are you there? Well, it looks like there's a slight technical problem there. Eldrin, are you there? Can you hear me now? Eldrin?
Who told you?
Well, it seems, Eldrin, now I can see.
Good morning, Elvis. Yes, we're outside the Newcastle Magistrates Court. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Hello, Elvis, can you hear me? Yes, Elvis, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can continue, Eldrin. Tell us what's going on there.
Hello, Elvis, can you hear me? Okay, well, perfect. We're outside the Newcastle Magistrates Court where Julius Malema is expected to appear. This is the first court appearance, so we don't expect it to be any longer, probably not even longer than an hour, except for, of course, if there is a motion by the counsel of Julius Malema to have the case struck off the roll. Remember that the EFF is also calling for the resignation of Sean Abrams. I just want to step out of camera quickly just to give you an indication of what has happened to the road here in front of the Magistrates Court. As you can see that the road has been barricaded as police expected thousands of EFF members to be out here in the numbers any moment from now. And we expected the court case to have started already. Magistrate court procedures normally start around about 9 o'clock, but unfortunately this court case hasn't started as yet. And now I'm joined by the spokesperson of the EFF, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. Looking at the sheer numbers that is out here, it's not really what you would have expected. I guess it's not even what the police would have expected, considering the contingent plans that they've put in place in Mbuyiseni.
Police are always dramatizing beyond their concern. There is no, in most of the cases, even if we have had the numbers that we had in Tshwane, there would have never been a reason for the type of drama that they put. Hopefully they do this in relation to the actual criminals who are stealing, taxpayers' money and the gangsters that are ruling us or are in government. But essentially, the number of people that are coming, I can't confirm because it's a different kind of a gathering. We've called on our people to come and defend the Freedom Charter. So maybe the police know from their intelligence that people are still making their way.
Well, let's actually speak about the defense or the interpretation of defending the Freedom Charter. According to this act that has been used, the Riotous Assemblies Act of 1956, you guys are arguing that it is a law of apartheid, and Sean Abrams was in Parliament recently and he argued that, listen, this is a law of the country which still stands, and until such a point when that law is repealed, they must use that law when it is being contravened.
It yet again falls on the hands of the EFF to fix the country. to take the country out of legacies of apartheid. It's just a demonstration that people there who have been running the country for the past 22 years have not done their job. But now we all know what job they've been doing. It's not the job that has been in the interest of making it a point that the laws of this country are consistent with the legislation of the Constitution as adopted in 1996. They've not done that, and this is one of them. You will remember, Aldrin, that when we arrived in Parliament, there were laws such as the medical aid, for an example, that is being forced on members of Parliament without their choice. And when we arrived, we said, how is this possible? And everybody agreed, no, it must be repealed. Why? Because they've not done what they're supposed to be doing in that Parliament, which is to make every legislation consistent with the Constitution. And now it's left on our hands to make sure that we continue to fix that legislation. But they are being opportunistic because they are using it knowing that to be the case. They know that it is inconsistent with the Constitution and they are using it. Why are they using it? Because they are obsessed with using state institutions to silence those that are speaking against the status quo, that are speaking against power. And that is essentially what is happening here. And it's sad that they are doing it on a situation where we were essentially quoting the Freedom Charter. I keep saying this. The quote, all shall have the right to occupy land wherever they choose, is a direct quote from the land clause of the Freedom Charter. And in a situation where there is no resolution of the land question, how would you demonize and criminalize people who are seeking land in a situation of so much homelessness, of so much landlessness? It's not explicable.
But the law also recognizes the ownership of land by those who actually own the land, those who have bought the land. You argue that some of that land has been stolen. But there's recognition that Mbuseni Ndlozi owns this piece of land and nobody is allowed to come and trespass or occupy that land.
I think the cases around land occupation would prove you wrong. Abahlali baseMjondolo have won cases about occupation. We have won cases in the Free State in the recent past about occupation, because you can't just drive people away. First of all, we've not heard of people who actually walk in someone's house and they take the house and they say, no, this is our house. That doesn't happen. What has happened is people see land that is laying bare when nothing is happening. It belongs to some fantonder. That fantonder may even be in Australia, forgotten that that is his property or their property. So and because of the situation of homelessness, because of the situation of landlessness, they move in, they build shacks. And if they've occupied that land 48 hours, they've got a case to make that if you move them from there, you've got to provide land elsewhere. And that's what we are saying, really. And that's why it's a problem. That's why we are saying the way to resolve that situation is to expropriate land without compensation for equal redistribution. That's when you would have decolonized. Until such a situation, you will not have decolonization, and you will continue to have situations of land occupation, because you did not resolve the fundamental colonial and apartheid question of land dispossession.
And I guess this also speaks to the inconsistencies or inability of government. For instance, there's been this call of a land audit that's still not happened. We still don't know who owns what, and that's been a consistent call even within the ANC as well, that this audit needs to be finished. We need to find out who owns what piece of land and how much of that land they own.
Like the argument on free education, they don't have political will to solve. What political will do they have is to loot state resources. There they move very fast to take things for themselves. Most of the questions that trouble the majority of South Africans, there's no speed. Why? Because they don't have the political will. If you had the political will, 2 decades and 2 years, that's long enough. That's long enough for you to resolve the land question. And if we are not going to do something, we're giving a simple example. In terms of both international law and our law, colonization is a crime against humanity. Apartheid is a crime against humanity. You can't go and pay people for crime. You've got to expropriate that land without compensation and begin to make sure that everybody is able to have the capacity to call this place their home. How do we do that if we've got the land? So I don't have hope. That's why we have formed the political party that is called the Economic Freedom Fighters. It's because we don't think that the ANC government is willing at all to do things like the land audit, but beyond, to expropriate and resolve the land question once and for all in the interest of all South Africans. Because the Freedom Charter's proposition begins with this country must belong to all of us who live in it. And to that extent, that's why it says then we have to be able to then expropriate that land. People must be able to have a place or places that they call a home. So until that is the situation, the decolonization would have not happened. But above all, we don't have hope at all that the ANC will do it, because if they did, they would have already done it. They don't have political will.
Well, there you have it. EFF spokesperson Mbuyiseni Ndlozi speaking there on what they call the unconstitutionality of the Rioters Act, which is what has been used to charge Julius Malema. There are two cases, separate cases, that Julius Malema will be appearing for. One is for a statement made in this area, so that court appearance is today. The second court appearance will be next week, Monday, which will be in Bloemfontein. The NPA has indicated that they will centralize the two cases, and that those two cases will be heard in one place. Just not too sure whether that one place will be in Bloemfontein, but all indications seems to be that that case will be centralized and heard in Bloemfontein. We'll bring you live visuals from inside the courtroom as soon as it gets underway, and my colleague as well, Mlungis, will be outside here, the courtroom, giving you all the information and all the EFF members who are expected to come out in their numbers and protest outside the Magistrates Court to show their support for Julius Malema. And they are saying hands off Julius Malema, and of course they're also calling on the NDPP, Sean Abrams, to resign. It's back to you in studio.
Thank you so much. That's our reporter Aldrin Sampia coming to you live from Newcastle. We'll keep you abreast of the situation there in Newcastle. You remember the old struggle song, My Mother Was a Kitchen Girl? Well, we're talking about domestic workers this morning, and there's a question that we posed to you. Let's put up that question for you right now. That question relates to domestic workers, and we're asking you if they are getting a fair deal, Eben, in this country.
Yeah, it's a question that we've asked since for 100 years of us. The answers are always the same, the solutions are the same, but they never seem to be implemented. Now, on the back of this, some interesting pictures that's emerged on social media, and I just want to go there. Now, last week, these pictures of domestic workers sitting outside their owners' compounds to hand out sweets to kids who were trick-or-treating on Halloween caused quite a stir on social media, as you can imagine. While domestic work is considered crucial to the smooth running of national economies, domestic workers remain one of the most vulnerable groups to exploitation, abuse, and modern-day slavery. Now, to talk to us about the rights of domestic workers, we are joined from our Sea Point studios this morning by Myrtle Witbooi from the South African Domestic Service and Allied Workers Union. She's the General Secretary. A very good morning to you, Myrtle. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and it's nice to be with you on the show this morning.
Myrtle, you saw those pictures that were just out there of domestic workers having to sit outside and having to hand out sweets because the madam couldn't care to open the front door, the gate. What do you make of that kind of thing in today's world?
In the first place, I would like to say I did not even know that we are now celebrating Halloween in South Africa. I just recently noticed it. But I think it is not surprising, if we talk about domestic workers, because domestic workers actually do have to have multitask, and one of this is always something that will exploit domestic workers. So, of course, employers would like to have, inside chatting, being on their cell phones, while the poor domestic worker is outside to read and give out a sweet. I'm not even sure if domestic workers know what it's all about. So, for me, this is something, it cannot be a joke because it's quite serious. But I think that domestic workers, it's time that they also need to say to the employer, I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean I must go and give sweets? And if we look at the whole system, it is white children coming to the doors, and, if we see all that sweet, what do you think going through the domestic workers' mind? So I think this is something we have to stop immediately.
You're right. It's something that we still have to stop in South Africa. But how do we stop this kind of thing, Myrtle?
You stop this kind of thing by bringing awareness across to domestic workers, by actually, having pamphlets, by actually educating domestic workers, and many of these things you have to put, at the steps of the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor has to make, they have to see that the implementation of labor laws is there. The labor laws quite clearly say what domestic workers must do. It say what is our jobs. It say what we are daily supposed to do. So if this is something nothing new. It is like saying a domestic worker has to do extra duties. It's also not actually, it's degrading the domestic worker because they are grown-up women.
Myrtle, I just want to ask you, I know there's lots of challenges, but what do you think are some of the most serious challenges facing domestic workers in South Africa right now?
I think the most serious challenges that facing domestic workers right now is the fact that many domestic workers are still not registered for unemployment, with the result that when a domestic worker becomes unemployed, that she doesn't have entitled to any benefits. That is one of the serious problems. The next serious problem is that domestic workers still not covered by the minimum wage. Although we've got the best laws, like they say in South Africa, yes, we've got good laws, but if a domestic worker does not know the minimum wage, how would she be able to speak up for herself? So I think that is part. The number said the biggest thing that's facing domestic workers now, and that is something that we've been fighting with the Department of Labor, is the compensation. There's actually no compensation for domestic workers, and by that I mean COIDA. If a domestic worker gets hurt at work, she cannot claim anything. With the result, if a domestic worker dies, the children are without the income, and that is the view that we face it. Also, you are also facing verbal abuse from employers. Employers tend to tell the domestic workers, when they speak to them about the increment, they tell to them, go and ask your government, go and ask, as if it's not their government. So I think there is still a lot of challenges. Most of domestic workers work still 7 days a week. So how do we bring across that South Africa do have the best laws? How do we make it aware to the domestic workers? On our own, a union can't do it. We need those people that is there in power to come down, sit down with us and discuss how can we make the domestic worker aware of all this labor laws that's covering them.
Now we see and we hear a lot about abuse still of domestic workers in South Africa. Talk to the domestic workers directly. Those that are suffering abuse right now, what's your advice to them? What should they do?
There's he going away. His sound is gone.
Looks like we've lost you, Myrtle. Sorry, Myrtle Witbooi is, well, she's the General Secretary of the Domestic Service and Allied Workers Union. We've been talking about the plight of domestic workers. Can we just take a look at some of those pictures again? Before we go into this, let's just take a look at the pictures. Wow, well, if you've just joined us, to show you what we're talking about. Of course, we had Halloween just over a week ago. Yes, now in the Disney Junior world of South Africa, we celebrate Halloween. And these are the pictures that emerged. This is here in Johannesburg, in the Westcliff, mind you. Domestic workers have to stand outside, hand out sweets to children who are, well, there you have more pictures. This is Johannesburg and Cape Town. Domestic workers having to stand outside the massive gates, as you can see, and hand out sweets to the children because, well, the madam inside of the house couldn't be bothered to open the gate to young children coming to ask for sweets. That's the plight. Now, I spoke to Myrtle Witbooi a short while ago, and Myrtle unfortunately left us. We'll continue this discussion, but let's move on. Of course, the latest data from early voting in the U.S. election suggests that Hillary Clinton is in the lead right now, but not by as much as her campaign team would have hoped for. Of course, tomorrow's real election day in America. Special votes and all of those are being cast, and we'll be keeping you up to date on this very channel, what happens with the U.S. election. Let's take a look at some of the tweets coming in. Pega Phuket says, U.S. election is essentially voting for having either an adult or a child as a president of the USA. Turkey Boxer says, that's your little look inside the machinery of the U.S. elections, aggressively boring and run by rules nitpickers. This is good. Democracy. A little bit of irony there, or a little bit of sarcasm. Moroz Kevin says, all the best, Mrs. Clinton and Mr. Trump, for the elections in the U.S. God bless the Americans. God bless America and no one else, as Chris Rock used to say. This one from Wazim says, Hillary Clinton, may Allah give you success in your elections for a better future of the USA. And Levi says, single opportunity of American people to define the president of the USA, because next elections define other people's and not the USA. Early voting, Trump. Imagine your country's being defined that you voted for Trump. This one from Shiva says, reason behind India and US elections are most interesting is likely we are a democratic nation. We have ability to shake the entire world. Yeah. Anyhow, take a look at our picture of the day. Now, this one comes from Old Mutual SA. Now, quietly, the Soweto Marathon happened yesterday. Let's take a look at a lovely picture of the winner. Yes, we congratulate Yinesu, first place and the men's winner of the Soweto Marathon. Of course, this was a massive race here in Johannesburg. And yeah, it's now on the world calendar. Moving on, we'll take a look now at our comment of the day. This one comes from Abramov Costa. Hashtag terrorism, he says, has a maximum disregard for human life, including women, disabled children. Terrorism is dark in contrast to war ethics. That's our tweet of the day. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, well, we'll continue our discussion around the plight of domestic workers in South Africa. Send us your tweets at SABC Newsroom. We'd love to hear what you think on this matter after a short break.
Macro is going big on festive season savings by bringing you cooking deals like the Brabrantia 7-piece stainless steel cookware set, only 1199, save 300 Rand. We're mixing things up with a Russell Hobbs jug blender for only 599, save 300 Rand. And save 500 Rand on the Russell Hobbs Legacy Breakfast Pack, now only 999. Share in these and other big festive savings for home, for business, for life. Only at Macro, big on life.
Welcome back. Now, according to Stats SA, that's Statistics South Africa, a large portion of the South African workforce is made up of domestic workers, around 10% they say, although there are systems and laws in place to protect the most vulnerable sector. But domestic workers, of course, remain the most vulnerable employees, often working unforgiving hours for very little pay. Although there are laws to protect them, organised labour says enforcement is lacking, and according to the CCMA, about 10% of calls received last year were from domestic workers reporting legal violations. Now, to further this discussion, we are joined in studio by Mokgadipela, the Department of Labour's spokesperson. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning to you and to viewers.
Now, we've put some pictures up a little bit earlier. I'll ask them for you to just have a look at these pictures. Of course, this was just over a week ago. We're celebrating Halloween. Of course, it's a new festivities coming into South Africa. But these ladies are forced to sit outside and hand out sweets to children who come trick-or-treating. How do you view this as the Department of Labour?
Well, I think this would just be an example in a long line of abuses domestic workers are subjected to. Remember, I think it just underscores the importance and the foresight of the department in having a sectoral determination to protect domestic workers and workers like those who are considered vulnerable. You know, in Economics 101, they would talk about market failure, the failure by the market to protect the weak. Hence, the department's intervention, conscious intervention to protect the weak. Now, this is just one such example. There are many, and our job is to ensure that such abuses stop. Indeed, we need this partnership that the lady from the trade union was speaking about. There's need for partnership and constant education, awareness to ensure that there is enforcement of the labor laws, because unless you do so, our laws will not be worth the paper they're written on.
quickly talk to us about the national minimum wage, because you can't talk about domestic workers in South Africa without talking national minimum wage. And I understand there's some good news in order for domestic workers in the next month or so.
Well, all I can say, I just want to say that in 2 weeks' time, the Minister of Labour will be announcing a new wage, meaning an increase in wages for domestic workers, and that will be effective from the 1st of December this year. So that's one thing that we would like to talk about. So I think it's quite important. I mean, as we speak, the hourly rate stands at 11 Rand 44, which would translate to a weekly wage of 504 and just over 2,000 being the monthly wage. Now, there will be an increase, and in fact, there's always interest around such matters. And can I say this also marks the end of the 3-year cycle.
Yeah.
This wage increase that the minister will soon be announcing is going to expire on the 30th of November next year.
Now, of course, there were complaints from organised labour saying the sector doesn't have the Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases Act. Has that been resolved?
Can I say that the minister has had a number of public engagements at which she explained that one of the amendments to the Compensation for Injuries and Diseases Act is to ensure that domestic workers are also covered in terms of COIDA. Now, amendments have gone through Parliament. This is just awaiting signature by the President.
And the plans in place to try and improve the sector generally. Just a quick overview for us.
Yes, well, I mean, obviously, one would need to go back to the basics to ensure that, there is compliance with the, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, to ensure that, basic things like, having contracts of employment explained properly, having to ensure that domestic workers are registered with the Unemployment Insurance Fund, they are paid properly in line with their sectoral determination. There is observance of, they enjoy the basic rights that any worker in South Africa is supposed to enjoy. Those sort of things, these are things that we really need to constantly focus on. Mindful of the fact that, you're dealing with private property. That's the big problem when it comes to domestic wage.
Now, domestic work, of course, in South Africa comes with a real apartheid legacy, where, and I think part of the violations of rights of domestic workers is born out of apartheid. Do you think there's enough, there's enough education of the employer, the homeowner in this case, about what they can and cannot do? I'm not talking about the domestic worker. I'm talking about education of the employer in this case. Should we be doing more?
No, certainly. I think we need to be doing more. Like I said, the minister has also taken a conscious decision to ensure that in all these public engagements, you've got employers, because as well as employer representatives, because that is important. These are people who need to ensure that there is enforcement. But can I also say that, just yesterday I spoke with our colleagues in KwaZulu-Natal province as well as Gauteng, just to check the level of compliance. And I was told that in KZN, as we speak, the level of compliance by employers with the labor laws stands at 75%. And in Gauteng, it stands at 80%. Now, obviously, our ideal is to ensure that we take it to 100%. There are cases of abuse, there are cases 1 or 2 cases where you hear that workers are being abused physically, and in those instances we need to make noise and to make sure that there is justice for the workers. And I think it's a constant battle, the campaign that has to be sustained and sustainable. Because you see, once you stop talking about it, people assume that the problem is over.
The thing that's very interesting for me is the change or the shift happening in South Africa is that more foreign domestic workers, often unregistered, are being employed in South Africa. How do we come to terms with that?
Yeah, I think this is a problem not only affecting the domestic worker sector, it affects many other sectors. There's a tendency by employers to take shortcuts, and it is important that, when people, when employers want labor, they need to source it properly. Now, if we realize that they decide to go out of their way to go for these foreign workers, we've got to find out why. And we know the reason behind that is that they know that these foreign workers are themselves vulnerable. They would accept conditions below the minimum wage, and it actually undermines our very laws that we've come up with. Now, we should not allow a situation where employers go out of their way to undermine the laws of our country.
I thank you for coming in today and talking to us about this. Some of those pictures are just really a little bit disturbing for me to see that in the year 2016, that this kind of behavior is still, well, it's still being practiced in South Africa. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Amilo.
That's Mokgadipela, who is, of course, the spokesperson for the Department of Labour. And yes, they are on top of all these things. They're addressing it. And, well, there's even a wage increase in the offing in the next couple of weeks for domestic workers here in South Africa. That's the great news. Thank you once again for being with us today. Now, remember, or don't forget, we're running a poll. We're running a poll, and we're going to talk about this in our next hour. We're asking you the question is, should the drinking age limit be increased to 21 years old in South Africa? Now, we've got 160 votes in. 69% say yes. Two-thirds, more than two-thirds of the people are saying, yes, raise the drinking age because we have a problem with our drinking here in South Africa. Now, I can tell you, we've got some comments that have been coming in with regards to the poll. Let's have a look at some of those comments that are coming in with regards to the poll. Mafa says, Newsroom, does age matter? People are already drinking from 14 years. Age will not reduce drinking. Mafa, what do you think will reduce drinking? Because we're the worst binge drinkers in the world. Unati Grootboom says, Newsroom, this age limit doesn't even help if it is 30. You still find kids buying booze at taverns. Come December, you will see. SABC News says Unati. Then Maibu Yamagwaza says, Newsroom, so 18-year-olds can vote, drive, join the army and get married, but not drink. Silly idea. Yeah, that's a little bit, that puts it in perspective. And Z says, Newsroom, unnecessary practice. As young as 15, they drink alcohol. No one is policing that. But we have to start policing it, Mzi. This one from Golden. And Golden says, Newsroom, age 25 should be the drinking limit in South Africa. Yeah, that's a little bit extreme, I would think. Anyhow, keep it coming. And go vote on our poll. We'd love to hear what you think. Should the drinking age be raised to 21 years old in South Africa? That's what we're talking about. Also, domestic workers, are they getting a fair deal in South Africa? That's a question of the day that we're asking you. So send us tweets on either of that. We'll put it up. As you can see, we love your interactions. That's ultimately what the Newsroom show is all about. Now, let's take a quick look at the front pages from around the world. We'll start in the United Kingdom. The Guardian reports there that the FBI has determined that a new batch of emails linked to Hillary Clinton's private email server have not changed our conclusion that she committed no criminal wrongdoing. That's according to FBI Director James Comey. He told congressional leaders that in a letter yesterday, yes, the day before the election. No coincidence there, I tell you. Then, moving to Australia, the Australian says cabinet ministers are pressing for action to defend free speech. Free speech after the Federal Circuit Court threw out a racial hatred case that took years to decide, building support for a move this week to explore far-reaching reforms to the Racial Discrimination Act there. Finally, in Iran, the Tehran Times reports that Iran's foreign ministry yesterday strongly condemned terrorist attacks in the Iraqi cities of Tikrit and Samarra that killed several people, including some Iranian pilgrims in the city of Samarra. That's where we are right now. Don't forget to vote in our poll, and don't forget to tell us what you think about the plight of domestic workers here in South Africa. After the break, Elvis will have a discussion, well, that will highlight the need for robust public participation and the issue of domestic work in South Africa. So don't go away.
ANC moved to ease tensions created by the heated public spat between National Treasury and Eskom.
Eskom denied allegations of impropriety regarding the matter. National Treasury issued a statement accusing Eskom of lying.
The fracas over hairstyles at a Pretoria school has drawn sharp focus on underlying racism and alleged abuse in some schools.
We want relevant answers from the MEC. You must fire the principal.
Here too, similar sentiments of underlying racism. just made me feel like I was not worthy enough of an education because of the type of hairstyle that I had. Because yesterday the statement was, writing an exam is a privilege.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom here on SABC News. It's Monday morning, well, 9:45 on a Monday morning, the 7th of November. We're dealing with, well, the plight of domestic workers. That we've spoken about that. Let's move on now and look at our poll, because we've been asking you this question. Should the drinking age limit be increased in South Africa to 21? Now, 161 voters, 69% say yes. We have a problem with drinking, underage drinking, binge drinking and the like, all of those in South Africa. So please keep it coming. On that score, that's our question. But let's go over to Elvis now, because he would like to start the discussion on the, well, raising the limit.
To drink or not to drink? That is the question. Now, highlighting the need for robust public engagement, the Minister of Trade and Industry, Rob Davies, issued an invitation for public comment on the National Liquor Act Amendment Bill. South Africa has the highest rate of fetal alcohol syndrome in the world, and the government reportedly spends 3.7 billion rand per annum on problems related to alcohol abuse. Now, proposed amendments include the raising of the legal drinking age from 18 to 21 and prohibiting the presence of a liquor outlet within a 500-meter radius of a school or rehabilitation centre. The initial deadline for submissions was extended by 2 weeks to November the 14th. But be that as it may, liquor industry stakeholders have requested a longer extension and have even opposed the amendments. Now, to tell us more about the proposed amendments and the submissions process so far, we are joined by McDonald Ntsenze. He's the Acting Director General for the Department of Trade and Industry. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Morning, and to the viewers. I'm Acting Deputy Director General.
Acting Deputy Director. Thank you so much for that correction, Mr. Ntsenze. Run us through the proposed amendments and the problems with the Liquor Act as it stands and the submissions that you've received thus far.
Now, as for now, we are still consulting, and then many people have not done that in writing, and then we are running workshops, seminars with them, and then therefore we don't have per se the written responses. Mm-hmm. But the bill provides for the age limit, raising it to 21, as you said, and then also 500 meters. Those who are already there, 500 meters within the religious bodies and other institutions, they will remain. But no new licenses will be given in order to trade within those premises. And then the other issue is the liability, that if a trader keeps on giving a person liquor and that person is virtually drunk or already drunk, that person goes out and causes an accident, that person, the trader, will have to be sued, will have personal liability. And then if distributors and then manufacturers send their liquor to unlicensed outlets, which is illegal, then something happens, they will be held responsible. So in the main, these are the issues, and the issue of burden of proof will have to revert, will have to go back to the offender.
Now, will the raising of the legal drinking age limit actually change drinking habits in the country, you think?
Yeah, we think there will be behavioral changes. There will be a drinking pattern that will have to be enforced by education and awareness. And then the traders will have to be educated be aware about the dangers and therefore enforce it by not selling it to the minors, not selling it to people who are already intoxicated, be they be minors. And therefore, by enforcing the law, advertisement, all those issues, there will be a culture, a certain culture that will prevail. And then we think education and awareness will make a dent.
I will ask you about some of the educational things that you're going to do to spread that awareness to the youth. But what do you say to those critics that says, when you're 18, you can already vote, you can drive, you can work, you can even go to the army, but you cannot drink?
Yes. We are saying liquor is a harmful substance. It's like a drug. Liquor, drug, and gambling, these are associated issues that are very harmful to the health of a person, and therefore, when we say let us not do them at this age, we should not compare such with the issue of signing a contract by a minor at a university, because there are many diseases that are associated with drinking. So we can mention maybe mouth cancer, brain damage, fetal syndrome, and then ulcers. All those issues should not be compared with the issue of just signing a contract at a university, as an example.
Mm-hmm. What is your response to claims by the concerned Tshwane Liquor Trade Association that the DTI has not responded at all to their request for a 3-month extension to the submission window?
Yeah, the Tshwane people, if I'm not mistaken, we consulted with them a lot before we went to cabinet, and then that's why we even went to the extent of saying we are no longer going to remove people who are within 500 meters. And therefore, they requested this 3 months, and then we extended it by 2 weeks because this bill has been delayed, and then we are saying it will not per se make any change to extend. People have been given a lot of time. We consulted before. Now we have virtually 2 months, and therefore we will also have meetings with them, and then we are saying we are pliable to change our positions here and there, provided we come with convincing arguments.
Mr. Ntetsentse, thank you so much for your time and joining us in our Pretoria studios. That was the Acting Deputy Director General for the Department of Trade and Industry, Mr. MacDonald Ntetsentse. Now, we'll continue with that discussion. Of course, we want to find out from you, what do you make of that particular age limit being raised to 21, the drinking age limit? You can participate in the poll, and we'll look at it a little bit later. Right now, it's over to Eben and Kendall with cricket.
Yeah, some great news for South Africa. Kagiso Rabada, yes, remember that name? He's inspired the Proteas to, well, one of the most memorable victories. 177-run win over Australia in the first test at the WACA just minutes ago. Now, Kendall is here. But, Kendall, before we talk about it, can we have a look at the end of the match?
100%. We've put together everything with regards to actually how the end of the match got to where it was. We got all the wickets being taken. Brilliance by everybody from Rabada through to
moment of
Bavuma.
magic from Temba Bavuma to get rid of Dave Warner. I think that will live down in folklore, because Warner was the one guy that could take the game away from us.
Yeah, that really inspired and sparked that fire that raised the entire batting lineup to the ground, to be honest.
I think people don't realise how special this performance really is. Because Kagiso Rabada had to really step up this time around, because Dale Steyn is out injured. He's on his way back to South Africa with a broken shoulder. There he does a bit of a Makai and Tini to, well...
Yeah, to celebrate his FIFA. To be honest, that man of the match performance that Kagiso Rabada put in, because we've just found out that he's actually been voted and selected as man of the match, was absolutely phenomenal. Temba Bavuma also getting a wicket while he's at it. Phenomenal stuff by this young man. But to be honest, a team performance of note. And here it is. Here's the match ending right now. Maharaj getting his wicket in the second session.
Yeah. It's almost poetic justice a little bit there for Keshav Maharaj, who hasn't picked up a wicket, but he got the one to win the game. So fantastic performance by South Africa. Fantastic performance by Kagiso Rabada, Vern Verlander, Keshav Maharaj, Temba Bavuma, the list goes on. Yeah. But the guy who probably stands out is JP Duminy, who set it up with some tremendous batting in the second inning. 100%.
I mean, to set the Australians a 539-run chase, they would have needed to break the old record by almost 100 runs to actually, this is Australia, to beat South Africa, which they didn't do.
Interesting. Well, fantastic news. South Africa won up in that series, but let's go over to Tsietse Monare for a look at the weather.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. So this is what you should expect. A good week is coming up for South Africa in terms of rainfall. We're expecting a wet week right across the northeastern parts of South Africa into KwaZulu-Natal, the Eastern Cape province a little bit, and then definitely for the Northwest province, Gauteng and over Limpopo province. Widespread showers are coming up for those top northeastern countries and also towards the western side as well. If you look at Namibia and the southern parts of Angola, there's a good chance of rainfall for you along those parts. And clear and dry conditions are expected for the Western Cape province going towards the Northern Cape. Temperatures are a little bit higher there. 36 for Upington basically is what you should expect. But like I said, it's going to be quite a good week in terms of rainfall coming up for South Africa. Bloemfontein 32 is your maximum. The R is at 31 degrees. And those lower 20s from Cape Town all the way to Port Elizabeth. Well, that's basically what you should expect because of a cold front that just passed about 3 or 4 days ago there, and Durban dropping to 24 degrees. Quite a hot day, though, for Messina, reaching a maximum of 34, and that's basically going to paint the rest of the Limpopo picture for you. Hot conditions are expected over the next couple of days along those paths. Bulawayo is at 39, Beitbridge also following suit with just a single degree shy of 40. Harare is at 31 degrees, and a lovely day is expected towards Maputo, despite the rainy conditions that you're expecting there. Madagascar, an average of about 27 is expected there. The hottest being Majanga at 32, and some of the coolest include Fianarantsoa at 24 degrees, and some partly cloudy skies coming up towards Lusaka, Malawi, and up north in towards Tanzania. Definitely rainy weather right from Kampala going all the way towards Libreville and into Brazzaville. Those regions should expect a bit of rain, becoming a lot stronger just towards Luanda, going in towards the central parts of Brazzaville. A bit of rain also coming in over the central parts, moving towards the northeastern side of Central Africa. Temperature-wise, 31 for Mombasa and 32 towards Dar es Salaam. Showers for Kigali, Kampala, and would you believe it, Juba as well could see some rain, but it's still going to be very hot there. 36 is your maximum. Bangui also sitting at 36, and then those lower 30s towards Kinshasa and Brazzaville, and upper 20s for Yaoundé and Libreville over much of that equatorial and western side of Africa. Partly cloudy skies too at some parts of the Middle East. If you're going to be in Tehran, mostly, yes, do expect a bit of clouds. And the dry weather right across the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and over the northern parts of Africa. But just a bit of a surprise, though, is that temperatures are dropping quite a bit over the northern parts. And also, rainy weather could be coming up over the next couple of days for some parts of Benghazi as well as over Tripoli. And Sabah, 30 degrees, Agadas at 32, quite a hot day for Central Africa. Now, very important city at the moment is that of Marrakech in Morocco. Because of COP22, that's basically just starting later today. For the next 2 weeks, it's going to be quite busy there in Morocco. And rainy weather is expected there at the moment. In fact, it might be raining as we speak. Conakry, Abidjan, Lagos, and those regions are expected to be quite hot. Niamey reaching a maximum of 38 degrees. That's where I leave it for the weather. Do stay tuned. There'll be more later.
There must be something. There has to be a place where young entrepreneurs can come, and get advice and interact with people that are knowledgeable.
Business for me really, it's a calling. I do believe that it is a calling. Because I even remember, even when I was younger, when I was in grade 4, I sold silkworms. And they were quite popular actually.
I was making a New York brand in South Africa. Being very proud of being a South African, I wanted to make it proudly South African.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
Yeah, welcome back. Very good morning to you once again. Just gone 10 o'clock. Time for us to bring you another news update here on the Newsroom show. Of course, Kendall Mahamate is with me on the sports desk this morning. And we've been asking you a question, of course. Well, it's not a much publicised question, I have to say. Do domestic workers get a fair deal here in South Africa? That's what we wanted to know from you. You've been sending in your tweets at SABC Newsroom. Let's take a look at a couple of the nice ones that have come in thus far. There we go. Do they get a fair deal? Ikonanazo says, in this country, our mothers are not treated well. They are underpaid, mistreated and abused by their employers. Asking, are they getting a fair deal? Frank Williams, he says, Newsroom, domestic workers' plight will change if there's regulations. It's from the top down. Frank, there are regulations, but we still flout them. Teboho says, Newsroom, my girlfriend is being paid 1,500 Rand a month and is not registered for UIF since 2008. Teboho, you should go and have a read up on your rights because that is way below what is accepted practice right now here in South Africa. Also, we've been running a poll with the earlier interview that you saw where we asked you, should the legal drinking age limit, should it be increased to 21 years here in South Africa? Now, 179 votes in right now, 68% say yes, it should be raised to 21, 32% say no. Yes, we have a problem with drinking in South Africa. We're the worst binge drinkers in the world. And per capita, we are amongst the biggest drinkers in the world. That's not according to me. That's according to the World Health Organization, who say South Africa are the worst binge drinkers in the world and amongst the biggest consumers of alcohol on this very planet. So that's the poll. Let's have a look to some of your tweets with regards to the poll that we put up. What are you guys saying about whether the legal drinking age should be raised? Let's have a look. This one from George Mashinini. He says, Newsroom, that does not help because they fall pregnant at 13 years. So more education than increase the limit. That's an interesting view. This one from Park Waizva. He says, Newsroom, keep the age limit at 18, but effectively prosecute those selling and drinking with underage people. Another interesting view. Cabello Hlole says, Newsroom, I guess the consumption of alcohol should be illegal in South Africa. Cabello, prohibition have taught us if you make anything illegal, it just goes out of control. Lechasa says, Newsroom, there is no need to increase the age limit because even underage are given liquor across the country. But that doesn't make it right, Lechasa. We have to find a way to make it work. Those are our tweets, those are our questions today to you. Thank you for sending in your views. Keep it coming. We'd love to interact with you here on Newsroom. This is your show after all. There's a lot of other news, but first, let's go to Kendall. No, let's do the headlines. Yes, the news headlines first, before we go to the sports news. Water has been released from the Sterkfontein Dam in the Free State into the Vaal Dam from today to supply the Gauteng province. The ANC will hold its regular National Working Committee meeting later this morning with a Public Protector's State of Capture report set to feature high on the agenda. Then, in a major boost for Hillary Clinton's presidential ambitions, the FBI says it will not bring criminal charges against the former Secretary of State. Yes, voting has started there. We're counting down to the real voting process tomorrow. Of course, Sherwin Bryce Pease is in the US. He will bring us, well, periodic updates, and we look forward to those. But right now, let's go to Kendall to give us the sports headlines.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Quite a lot has happened since we first opened the show in the morning.
Yeah,
the Proteas have gone on to grab that famous victory.
I'm so happy for KG Rabada, Themba Bavuma, but mostly I'm happy for JP Dumini, a guy who's been through a whole lot, and he was unlucky not to be man of the match.
He has been much maligned, I can tell you, but he's done very good for South Africa out in Perth this morning. And this is what's coming up in the sports today.
Seem convinced about the foul. That could be gone. Yes, he's given him.
The Proteas earned a famous 177-run victory against Australia at the Wacker in Perth in the first of a 3-test series.
He's got himself 5 wickets.
Twala denied by Ngobeni, and there it is. Free State Stars join Cape Town City.
Free State Stars beat Kaizer Chiefs 6-5 in penalties after a 2-2 draw in their last 8 Telkom Knockout Cup match in Durban.
You can almost feel the Liverpool fans on the cot purring with this performance. Firmino, very strong. He got there first. For a moment, the Chief was on it.
Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool is sent to the top of the English Premier League after a resounding 6-1 thrashing of Watford. Of course, we'll be bringing you more detail in the sports bulletins. I'll also be chatting to Jody Hendricks to wrap up all of the action from the weekend. But for now, it is back to Evan, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Yes, all the Liverpool supporters around the world are celebrating a title already, but it's still a long way to go. Anyhow, our top story. Water from the Sterkfontein Dam in the Free State has been released into the Vaal Dam. The dam outside Harrismith will prevent the Vaal Dam's level from dropping below 25%. The Department of Water and Sanitation says the dwindling Vaal Dam is forcing it to dip into its water reserves. The Vaal Dam is Gauteng's major water supply. The Sterkfontein Dam, on the other hand, is the province's last line of defence against the taps running dry. The reserve dam was opened more than 36 years ago now. Water restrictions have been tightened in a number of municipalities amid the persistent drought in the country. Meanwhile, farmers have welcomed showers in some parts of the Free State as the country experiences one of the worst droughts in decades. 70 millimetres of rain was recorded in Bloemfontein alone over the weekend, but in parts of the eastern Free State like Senekal and Kwakwa, well, they're still desperate for rain there.
A welcome relief. Even these children could not hide their joy at the recent rain that fell in the past 2 days. But for some, heavy rains means flooding, with some parts of Bloemfontein remaining inaccessible, forcing many cars to make use of alternative routes. But residents are hoping for more rain.
Even if the rain doesn't rain, the grass will be there, the plants and the cows are dying of drought.
Farmers say the recent drought has been worst ever witnessed.
The dam behind me is about the first time in 40 years there's no water, so that we can get water in our dams and in our spray turn things.
More rain is expected. The Weather Service forecast more showers in some parts of Free State, Northwest and Northern Cape. Ishmael Mudiba, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
The Secretary-General of the South African Communist Party, Dr. Bladen Nzimande, says the party will defend Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan, who is allegedly facing new charges. Nzimande has called on party members to intensify the fight against what he described as the abuse of state organs. He was speaking at the closing rally of the Red October campaign in Sebokeng.
Closing the annual Red October campaign, the South African Communist Party stood firm on its position pertaining to fresh reports that the National Prosecuting Authority is bringing new charges against Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan, as well as ANC Secretary General Gwere Mantashe.
We are calling on all South Africans to say enough is enough. We are going to fight this thing in the same way as we fought to defend the Comrade to Change Hope.
ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte weighed in on the state capture debacle.
So when people talk about corruption now, it must be a black person. And so therefore, we cannot say that the CEO of GENCO was corrupt, but we can say that Brian Molefe is corrupt.
The party has cautioned alliance members about corruption at branch level and has called members to humble themselves and listen to its electorate.
Door-to-door comrades must be permanent. We can't just do door-to-door just because we are going to elections. We must start door-to-door now, do it all the time.
The alliance hopes to launch a stronger campaign ahead of the 2019 national elections. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Sebokeng.
Now, the ANC in the Western Cape says it's working hard to stabilise the party ahead of the 2019 general elections. Despite its poor performance in the recent local government elections, acting provincial chair Kaya Magaka says its structures in the region are more balanced now.
It was a bruising election for the ANC in the Western Cape, but the ANC in the province says it's on top of things.
2019 is just around the corner. We acknowledge that, we know that very well. That's why we are starting now to respond to the problems that came up during our election campaign.
One of the problems facing the party, that of ill discipline, says Magaka, referring to his comrade Fransman. Fransman has been very vocal about his current situation. Earlier this year, he was accused of sexual harassment, a plot, Fransman says, set up by factions within the party. With a DC pending, Fransman says he does not believe he will get a fair hearing, and he refuses to remain silent about that, saying he has always been a dedicated cadre.
Under my custodianship in 2014, we've increased with 3%. In the last election, in one's absence, we've gone down to 25%. Those are the hard issues. I will never be able to keep quiet when there's a National Disciplinary Committee on one, and you have been promised through a letter that you will get documents, and the documents doesn't arrive, and you're being forced into a kangaroo court. Those things I will never allow.
8 NEC members have been deployed to the Western Cape to interact with residents and hear their stories. Fransman himself will be going around the province on what he calls a listening campaign to assess the situation on the ground and to try and rebuild the party here. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Cape Town.
Democratic Alliance leader Musi Maimane says the party is considering legal action following Parliament's failure to schedule their motion of no confidence in President Jacob Zuma. Maimane wrote to the Speaker of Parliament with a request to table the motion in the National Assembly.
Addressing the media after a meeting of the Federal Council, the party's second highest decision-making organ, Maimane said South Africans have lost confidence in President Jacob Zuma. He says following the release of the former public protector, Thuli Madonsela's State of Capture report, the DA had no other option but to take action over what he called the evidence contained in the report.
We moved a motion of no confidence to which we were tentatively assured that it will be scheduled on Thursday.
But to the party's dismay, it was not.
What we are intent on doing is considering our legal options to ensure that that motion is scheduled.
The DA says it's fighting corruption and wants to see it defeated. The party believes that by addressing corruption, it will address unemployment and achieve economic freedom.
We had 900 plus employees in the mayor's office, most of them politically connected, to come and do what was called public coordination or rapid response. But then not even once have I even received now a report that is coming from any of these employed people to show that there is some work that is taking place there. At a cost of 250 million rand.
In Gauteng, another discovery highlighted.
232 billion rands worth of infrastructure backlog. You remember very well the previous mayor spent a fortune during the elections, boasting about 100 billion rands that the city is going to be spending the next 10 years.
The DA says this is just the tip of the iceberg, as it expects to uncover more examples of corruption in the coming months. Lehana Troteti, SABC News, Johannesburg.
EFF members have started arriving in Newcastle ahead of the court appearance of their leader, Julius Malema. He stands accused of incitement to commit trespassing for calling on people to occupy vacant land. The comments were made in Madadeni in Newcastle ahead of the local government elections. The EFF leader faces a similar charge for remarks made in Bloemfontein in 2014. The matter will be in court next week. Malema says the charges are part of a political campaign against him. His party has also made a call on the National Director of Public Prosecution, Sean Abrahams, to resign. Abrahams defended in Parliament the decision to charge Malema under the Riotous Assemblies Act of 1956.
It's a law that is being used to silence us, let alone our freedom of expression and our freedom of speech, just the basic fundamental claim of the liberation struggle. Land must be restored to its rightful owners, and those are black Africans. Until such a time, we're not going to be silenced.
A strong police contingent will be deployed to hotspots in KwaZulu-Natal during the by-election scheduled for this week. 10 councillor candidates died prior to this year's local government elections in the province. The provincial government has since appealed for calm.
Ward 6 in Newcastle, one of the wards that will be contested. Thembi Mbongo, who was an ANC councillor candidate here, was gunned down just before the August poll. She's one of almost a dozen councillor candidates allegedly killed ahead of the elections in what is believed to be politically motivated violence. The deaths have given this community pause, with many living in constant fear. They've appealed for both earthly and divine intervention.
We plead with the government to bring more police in the area so that we can feel free and safe in our community.
We're here to assure our people as well that the police have given us the assurance that they are in all areas to make sure that all our people are safe.
The ANC has warned its members to refrain from violence and a call on law enforcement agencies to bring the perpetrators to book.
Violence during elections needs to be stamped out, and it's important for our people to know that elections should be about choice. It should be about the celebration of our constitution. It should not be about fear, intimidation, shootings and death.
By-elections will be held on Wednesday. Simpiwe Makanya, SABC News, Newcastle.
Shifting our focus abroad now to the US presidential election. The FBI says it stands by its earlier finding that no criminal charges are warranted against Democrat Hillary Clinton for using a private email server during her stint in government. The announcement lifts a cloud over her presidential campaign and closes the FBI probe over Clinton's email practices. The law enforcement agency informed Congress of the newly discovered emails more than a week ago, throwing the race for the White House into turmoil. It also helped erode Clinton's lead over Republican candidate Donald Trump in the final stretch before tomorrow's vote. At a rally in Michigan, Trump says the FBI couldn't have reviewed 650,000 new emails in 8 days, adding that Clinton was protected by a rigged system. Now, the latest Reuters Ipsos poll showed Clinton with a 5 percentage point lead over the New York businessman nationally. That's 44% to 39% of the Donald.
New York, a hive of activity.
I think that there's a lot of hype, and when we went past the Trump Tower, there were people demonstrating, and I think that there's a lot more involvement with the public.
Yeah, I agree as well. A lot more involvement and everything else. But it's very difficult to see which way. You can't tell.
Republican candidate Donald Trump and Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton are both on a final push for votes.
And I'm supporting her because I think she has the principles and values that represent America.
Hillary Clinton is not a woman of respect. She gave away our jobs. This woman didn't care about America. Trump cares about America.
I would like to have the Hillary be elected as the first woman president.
I believe Trump is great for our country. We need somebody with an economic background. We also got to be tough on our laws. We got too many illegal immigrants in this country. We got to put Americans first, and Obama has lost sight of that. Hillary, with her email scandal, should be in prison for what she has done.
He's a racist. He refused to rent to black people in the 70s when he had a chance. He refused to acknowledge that our president was born in America. His vice president wants gay people to go to classes to turn straight. He makes fun of women's appearance. He called women disgusting when they go to the bathroom. He wants to keep an entire religion out of the country. He has made fun of handicapped people by mocking them while shaking.
Trump is a bad person. Hillary is going to win the election.
Clinton is currently leading by a small margin, but Trump is still hopeful that he will take a lead on Tuesday. Sophie Mukwege, SABC News, New York.
Back on the African continent now, Kenyan coffee has been on its knees for close to 3 decades now. Production in the East African nation has dropped from 130,000 tons to just about 50,000 tons as a result in change in land use to more lucrative sectors, mismanagement of the industry, as well as local and global cartels that rip off farmers.
Shelf ready for the Scandinavian market.
We sell everything for export and everything for the Scandinavian market.
From bean to cup. But this is not where the story starts. This is where the journey of a Kenyan coffee bean and fortune for thousands of farmers who have been at the mercy of brokers and middlemen for years begins. We're in Othaya, central Kenya. It is here that the Danish-owned African coffee roasters sources its coffee from.
When I met with Othaya Farmers Cooperative back in 2011, almost all of their coffee was sold at the Nairobi Coffee Exchange. They had almost no direct trade. Today, 5 years later, 60-70% of all their sales is through direct trade.
Kenya produces about 1% of the world's annual coffee crop. Coffee was once Kenya's top foreign exchange earner, but local and global coffee cartels have worked against the industry, which comprises about 60% small-scale farmers. This is why the partnership between African coffee roasters and the Farmers Cooperative Society was welcome.
During those times when we didn't have the cooperation between us and the Danish people, we used to get about 80 shillings per kilogram, at times 40 shillings. But now we are getting a tune of 76 shillings this year. Last year we got 80, an average of 62-61%. So you can see now the percentage has gone up. Also the money entering into the farmer's pocket has also gone up.
Like this year, although I won't tell you the amount which I got, I really left it to the bank.
That is good news for our people who had abandoned their crops for other lucrative sectors. This, despite the fact that Kenya's Arabica coffee is renowned globally for its quality. It is a story you will hear across Africa. The story of producers exporting their products outside the countries as raw materials. And therefore, without value addition, it means they can only get low returns. And so, organizations like Africa Coffee Roasters are helping farmers to add value to the coffee. And before they send it out of the country, they are able to get more returns.
In May this year, where we bought most of the coffee for this year, the Nairobi Coffee Exchange was averaging at $282 US per bag. We were buying at $380 US per bag, so it's $100 more.
This is because by working directly with the farmers, the middleman has been eliminated. The supply chain has been shortened.
Prepare mucilage in the fruit.
To meet the strict European standards, farmers attend monthly field schools. The idea is to ensure high-quality coffee that will fetch them better prices. That quality can be tested right here in their mills in Othaya.
Medium FAQ is also a nice cup.
They brought this traceability project. We are able to follow the husbandry of coffee from the farm to the wet mill and now to the dry mill. The grades have improved.
African coffee roasters have invested 400 million shillings in the project this far, employing 40 people at the factory and indirectly generating 75,000 jobs in the rural areas. This year, the company bought 400 bags of coffee worth about 10 million shillings. At home in Denmark, the taste buds have been tickled.
People are excited about the coffee. They're excited about that the coffee is actually produced to a shelf-ready product in the country of origin. So we've seen a huge rise on the brands where we're using coffee from here.
The Othaya coffee bean will hopefully help shake things up in the Kenyan coffee sector as more cooperative societies embrace value addition and direct exports. Sarah Kimani, SABC News in Othaya, Central Kenya.
What is a national anthem and why do we need national anthems?
A national anthem becomes an instrument to foster social cohesion, identity, to create a sense of identity of a country.
It does happen that people feel that they cannot commit to what the national anthem does.
Unity is not formed from the sky. People don't just despise the national anthem, but it is because of certain things that are actually happening. The issue of languages, for instance. The issue of apartheid statues and monuments.
Good morning and welcome back here on the Newsroom show. It's just gone 10:26 here in Johannesburg. That's Central African time for wherever you are on the African continent and the wider world, as we are live right now on YouTube as well. Now, of course, we've been running a poll asking, while talking to the legal drinking age here in South Africa, we've been asking you, viewers, should the drinking age limit be increased to 21 in South Africa? 186 votes in right now. 68% say yes, 32% say no, forget about it, don't bother. That's what our poll says right now. Now, I can tell you that the Department of Trade and Industry has extended the deadline for submissions on the National Liquor Act. This comes after traders and producers asked for an extension. The amendments propose that the legal drinking age be raised from 18 to 21. The amendments also propose that liquor outlets should not be within 500 meters of schools and rehabilitation outlets. Now, to talk to us about the proposed amendments and more, we are joined from the capital, that's our studio in Pretoria, by Sibani Mngadi from SALBA, the South African Liquor Brand Owners Association. Sibani, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Evan.
Sibani, just give us a quick overview. SALBA, that's the South African Liquor Brand Owners Association. What's your take on the amendments on the table that's being proposed right now?
Well, I seem to be having a problem with the sound this side, but if the question is about the age 18 to 21, the issue, we need to be clear in terms of what you are trying to address. I think the issue in South Africa is primarily about the underage drinking. Whether that is at 18 or 21, that's probably less of an issue. We need to be focusing on how we ensure that we enforce the legal drinking age at whatever age. But I think the core problem is that the government and DTI has not been able to consult as much as possible. Just last week, the Portfolio Committee in Parliament requested that they extend consultation period so that we are able to discuss and look at all the implications of the regulations or amendments that have been proposed, so that all stakeholders, whether it's small traders in the townships and in other areas, are able to understand the implications and make their submissions accordingly. And we are still awaiting a full response on that as to whether that can be extended either by 3 months that have been requested by Chavenas or whatever time period that has been requested by Parliament.
Sibani, you can hear me now.
I can't hear you at all, Eben.
Okay, Sibani, I'm going to have to leave you there, unfortunately, my friend. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. We were talking about the legal drinking age being raised from 18 to 20 to 21 years old. I'll try and get back to Sibani while they're working on it. Let's take some of the live tweets on the question that we've been asking you. Should the legal drinking age, should it be raised to 21? Now, Vanessa says, Newsroom, we've been a bad example to our youth on almost every moral ground. This increased age limit proves we're trying for them. Wow. Susan Rabia Donis says, Newsroom, return the age for everything back to 21. It's vital to save the 12 to 19 youth generation and keep them in school. However, Susan, if you prohibit people, they just do it, man. Vanessa says, increasing the age limit won't change things immediately, but it's a great investment, a step towards better control. Now, of course, we've also, this is George. He talks about Newsroom, that does not help. We're asking if this, of course, raising the drinking age. He said, raising the drinking age, that does not help because they fall pregnant at 13 years. So more education than increasing the limit is what George Mashinini is saying to us. Of course, we've also asked the question today with regards to, well, the plight of domestic workers in South Africa. Here are some of the tweets that you've been sending in to us with regards to the issue of how poorly domestic workers are being treated here in South Africa. Now, IH Nazo says, Newsroom, in this country, our mothers are not treated well. They are underpaid, mistreated and abused by their employers. Talking, of course, about domestic workers in South Africa. Frank Williams says, domestic workers' plight will change if there's regulations. It's from the top down. We have regulations, Frank. Teboho says, Newsroom, my girlfriend is being paid 1,500 Rand a month and is not registered for unemployment benefits since 2008. Now, that is abuse. And that is against the law. And there's a lot of that. And just to give you some views quickly, it's just some idea. This is our question of the day, right? Do domestic workers, do they get a fair deal in South Africa? Now, according to Stats South Africa, 1.5 million domestic workers are registered here in South Africa. Yes, 1.5 million are registered. Those are South African registered domestic workers. You can double that to almost 3 million people because another 1.5 million are unregistered or are foreigners working in South Africa as domestic workers. All of this concerns were caused by these pictures emerging on social media. This was during Halloween. There you see the lovely mansion in the background, and here somebody's mother, somebody's granny has to stand outside and hand out sweets to children passing by the house because the madam living inside of the mansion could not be bothered to answer the door to these annoying children, obviously, that are coming. Now, it's not just one picture. There are quite a few pictures that have emerged. A couple here out of the West Cliff in Johannesburg. Here you see another couple of ladies sitting next to a bowl of sweets, having to hand over. There's two more mothers and grandmothers who have to, well, sit out and hand out sweets in the hot sun, handing out sweets outside the mansion because the madam is not really keen on opening the door 5 or 6 times to hand out the sweets herself. So that's why we ask you the question, do they get a fair shake? Of course, we've had the discussions around minimum wage and all the like. Is it slavery? Well, do domestic workers get a fair deal in South Africa? That's our question of the day. A little bit earlier, we were joined by Myrtle Witbooi. She's from the South African Domestic Service and Allied Workers Union, the General Secretary she is, and she talked to us about the rights of domestic workers and her reaction to those pictures that I showed you of the domestic workers sitting outside, well, sitting out their employers' compounds or homes to hand out sweets to kids who were trick-or-treating on Halloween.
In the first place, I would like to say I did not even know that we are now celebrating Halloween in South Africa. I just recently noticed it. But I think it is not surprising, if we talk about domestic workers, because domestic workers actually do have to have multitask, and one of this is always something that will exploit domestic workers. So, of course, employers would like to have, inside chatting, being on their cell phones, while the poor domestic worker is outside to read and give out the sweets. I'm not even sure if domestic workers know what it's all about. So for me, this is something, it cannot be a joke because it's quite serious. But I think that domestic workers, it's time that they also need to say to the employer, I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean I must go and give sweets? And if we look at the whole system, it is white children coming to the doors, and, if we see all that sweet, what do you think going through the domestic workers' mind? So I think this is something we have to stop immediately.
You're right. It's something that we still have to stop in South Africa. But how do we stop this kind of thing, Myrtle?
You stop this kind of thing by bringing awareness across to domestic workers, by actually, having pamphlets, by actually educating domestic workers, and many of these things you have to put, at the steps of the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor has to make, they have to see that the implementation of labor laws is there. The labor laws quite clearly say what domestic workers must do. It say what is our jobs. It say what we are daily supposed to do. So if this is something new, it is like saying a domestic worker have to do extra duties. It's also not actually, it's degrading the domestic worker because they are grown-up women.
Myrtle, I just want to ask you, I know there's lots of challenges, but what do you think are some of the most serious challenges facing domestic workers in South Africa right now?
I think the most serious challenges that facing domestic workers right now is the fact that many domestic workers are still not registered for unemployment, with the result that when a domestic worker becomes unemployed, that she doesn't have entitled to any benefits. That is one of the serious problems. The next serious problem is that domestic workers still not covered by the minimum wage. Although we've got the best laws, like they say in South Africa, yes, we've got good laws, but if a domestic worker does not know the minimum wage, how would she be able to speak up for herself? So I think that is part. The number said the biggest thing that's facing domestic workers now, and that is something that we've been fighting with the Department of Labor, is the compensation. There's actually no compensation for domestic workers, and by that I mean COIDA. If a domestic worker gets hurt at work, she cannot claim anything. With the result, if a domestic worker dies, the children are without the income, and that is the view that we face. Also, you are also facing verbal abuse from employers. Employers tend to tell the domestic workers, when they speak to them about the increment, they tell to them, go and ask your government, go and ask, as if it's not their government. So I think there is still a lot of challenges. Most of domestic workers work still 7 days a week. So how do we bring across that South Africa do have the best laws? How do we make it aware to the domestic workers? On our own, a union can't do it. We need those people that is there in power to come down, sit down with us and discuss how can we make the domestic worker aware of all this labor laws that's covering them.
That was a discussion I had a little bit earlier. Of course, we're dealing with the plight of domestic workers, but we've also asked you around the legal age, should the legal drinking age be raised to 21 in South Africa? Now, of course, we lost Sibani Mgadi a little bit earlier from the South African Liquor Brand Association, Owners Association in the capital. Are you back with us, Sibani? You can hear me now?
I can hear you clearly.
Fantastic. Now, just give us your views as the Liquor Brand Owners Association. What do you want? Do you want the age to be raised, the legal age, drinking age to be raised to 21, and what would that achieve?
Well, Eben, you'll understand that we represent manufacturers. We produce and sell in various countries. We know that internationally the range in terms of legal drinking age is as low as 16, say, in Italy and Germany, and it can go up to 21 in the case of the US. But the majority of countries are around 18 years old, and that is consistent. If it's legal drinking age, it's usually in line with your right to be able to vote, to enter into contract, what we call the age of maturity. And in South African context, then it will make sense to retain it at 18. But there are practical issues that we would like to have them discuss and clearly understood as to what does this mean. Currently, in terms of our advertising as alcohol industry, we advertise only on TV programs where we are certain that at least 70% or more of the audience is over the legal drinking age. Now, if you push it to 21 and also apply the 10 o'clock restriction that has been proposed, that basically means even for SABC there won't be any advertising of alcohol, and it will go probably to other pay stations where they have a relatively older audience. And I think those things will need to be discussed and understood as such, whether the country is taking that decision or not. And we feel that in this instance, I think there is a little bit of hastiness to try and push through these regulations without necessarily engaging with everyone else. One of the questions we have asked the DTI is, what happens if somebody between the age of 18 and 21 has to work at a restaurant or as a barman and a promoter of alcohol products? Is that allowed or not allowed? And we have not been able to get clarity on that. You know that the majority of those people will be, say, students at the universities. Those students are already under much pressure in terms of their income. You have seen the protest and so on, and whether they can afford to lose that type of income.
Sabani, now in South Africa, we've got a problem with drinking. We're the worst binge drinkers in the world, according to the WHO, and of the biggest consumers of alcohol on the planet, generally speaking. As SALBA, what do you propose we do to arrest this problem?
Yes, we need to narrow the problem down. The reality in South Africa is that the majority of people do not consume alcohol. We have a small population of alcohol users who unfortunately are drinking excessively. And how do we then deal with that? For us as industry, we have put on the table that we are prepared to make sure that we invest in education and awareness. And for instance, the issue of underage drinking, we need to have better enforcement in terms of dealing with outlets or any other person who happens to sell alcohol to a person below the legal drinking age. And that's the enforcement that is needed. We have committed to work together with government, because much of this is about behavior and understanding, to make sure that people understand the implications of alcohol misuse and they are encouraged to avoid abuse. And we are happy to go as far as investing even in the treatment and rehabilitation of people in the cases where there is alcohol addiction. But I think while we agree that we have quite good regulations currently, we need better enforcement and we need better partnership. One of the things we have proposed to the DTI is around people below the age of 18. We have smart card now coming through from the Department of Home Affairs. We also have banks who can assist us to restrict people below the age of 18 from consuming alcohol. Already it's applicable in terms of social security grant cards, which are not accepted at most of the liquor outlets that we work with. So those practical actions are the ones that are needed to make sure that we deal with the problem. I think we need to then be able to engage properly and discuss either ourselves as manufacturers, traders, and various others, and so that we understand the full implications of the proposed regulations.
Sabani, thank you. We've run out of time, unfortunately. I appreciate you coming onto the show today to talk about, well, an emotive issue around, well, the age the legal age of drinking? Should it be raised from 18 to 21 years in South Africa? And does it even work? Well, we've asked you, what do you think? And this is what you say. 179 of you have voted this morning. 68% says yes, raise the drinking age limit to 21 in South Africa. Now, whether that is going to, well, that is going to help us with the problem we have. Binge drinking specifically is a problem that South Africa is struggling to come to terms with. That's where we're going to leave the drinking bit for now and take a look at the headlines from the African continent. What are the big stories? What's a big story in Zimbabwe? Well, the Herald reports that Zimbabwe has rejected calls by European countries at the United Nations Human Rights Council Working Group meeting to embrace homosexuality, but accepted 142 other recommendations that are in line with the national constitution. Then, in Angola, the Jornal de Angola says the Ministry of Territorial Administration and representatives of political parties with and without parliamentary seats will today hold a working meeting to evaluate the progress of the electoral registration process and clarify any doubts. Then finally, in Namibia, the Namibian reports that Attorney General Saki Shangala last week defended government's decision to pull out of the International Criminal Court, saying the country's domestic remedies are efficient and sufficient. Well, that's my bit for now. Of course, standing by here on the sports desk right now, Jody's here. Jody is a regular on a Monday morning. Him and Kendall are here to talk about, well, South Africa's terrific performance at the Waka in Perth. Also, well, the Boks came from behind to snatch a draw from the jaws of defeat over the weekend. I know Jody will be quite outspoken about that, but they'll be with us after a short little break to give us, well, an update, what's happening, or what's been happening in the world of sport. Only good news for South Africa so far today. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Macro is lending a helping hand with big festive season savings that'll move you. Like the Totem 16-inch or 20-inch Mojo bikes for only $10.99. Save 200 Rand. Or save 200 Rand on the Bounce King 10-foot trampoline, now only $24.99. And zip away on a Zingo X100 electric scooter for $1,999. Save 300 Rand. Share in these and other big festive savings for home, for business, for life. Only at Macro. Big on life.
What is the price of ambition? Early mornings, late nights, or sacrificing the little things now for bigger things tomorrow? Ambitious people are all made of the same stuff. Big dreams, big dedication, and a big attitude. With an understanding that sometimes to get ahead in life, you need a helping hand from those a little bigger than you. For home, for business, for life. Macro, big on life.
Good morning, welcome back. Now, as Eben said just before the break, we've got lots to talk about, and mostly about Kagiso Rabada's inspiration for the Proteas to a memorable 177-run victory over Australia in the first test at the Waka just a few minutes ago. Now, from being behind after day one, the Proteas, and also losing Dale Steyn to injury early on, the Proteas turned up the heat and crushed their hosts to take the first test in a 3-match series. Joining us is Ed Rainsford, former Zimbabwean cricketer and now SABC commentator. He's on the line right now. Ed, good morning. Please tell us, far from a brittle side, the Proteas?
Well, it's a very good morning, a happy morning for if you're a South African, and if you're Australian, I think you're still licking your wounds from a from a drubbing in South Africa and losing the first test match since 1988, the first test match of a test match series since 1988. And I think Australia have a lot to think about.
No, absolutely. I mean, what stood out for you in this particular test? I mean, would it have been from the batting lineup, Dumini's performance? Would it have been Vernon Philander putting in an impressive performance with the bat? Or is it in the bowling and fielding?
Well, for me, I think the first thing that stood out for me is how the South African team came together as a unit. They spoke about it, and Kagiso Rabada actually spoke about it in his interview after he got the man of the match. It was about when Dale Steyn went down, it was about everybody pulling their weight. And it was started by Dean Elgar and how patient he was with the bat. And then JP Dumini, who actually came out the next day after scoring 100 and spoke about how he actually thought that his test career was over and was thinking about walking away from test cricket. And for the selectors to continue showing him support and giving him the opportunities over the last 18 months after a dreadful tour to India. So it was about that brotherhood, it was about that family, it was about the selectors, it was about the supporters that continued to back this team. And then if you want to look at individuals' the contributions, you look at Dean Elgar's 100, you look at JP Dumini's 140, that's 250-run partnership. And then Kagiso Rabada, the humility of the man, the way he conducts himself off the cricket field, on the cricket field, and he gives everything for South Africa. So if you're looking at it from a holistic point of view, you're going to look at it from the team and some of the individual contributions.
Now, phenomenal stuff. That we're certainly hoping that they carry this form straight into Hobart, because that's the next test. What would you expect from them going into Hobart?
Well, first of all, I think they need to put their feet up and rest their minds. It was a very mentally and physically draining test match this, because of how much work each individual had to put in. So I think the next couple of days of travel and relaxation, and then maybe regrouping and have a light training session, and then talk about going into Hobart, because the confidence is there. I think it's more about the rest that's needed. The confidence is definitely there, and then when they get to Hobart, look at the conditions and see how they're going to be able to select a team. I think there will only be one change in the selection for South Africa. I think Kyle Abbott will come in. He offers something with the ball. If there's any swing in the air, he'll definitely contribute to getting that swing and maybe getting some early inroads. I think from Australia's point of view, I think they need to look really deeply into their cricket, because I think they have a sense of arrogance, and I think they think that they're still the team of 99 to 2003. I think they don't really have X-factor bowlers. I think Mitchell Starc coming into this team was not match fit. I think Hazelwood did a job, but there wasn't anything that you would be scared of. And I think a lot of international teams around the world will look at Australia and think if they had to up their game by 25% and have a belief, they can really push them. So Hobart, it's all about the conditions. It's in Tasmania, a little island off the shore of Australia. The weather can play a contributing factor in terms of rain. Yep. If there's cloud cover, the bowlers may contribute. But if it's a sunny day, it's definitely a flat wicket.
Ed, thank you so much for coming through and chatting to us on this. We really appreciate your valuable insights, and we certainly are hoping that the Proteas carry on with this.
You got my number. Call me anytime.
Done deal. There you have it. Ed Rainsford, former Zimbabwe cricketer, now SABC commentator. We're definitely going to be calling him again. Now, dominating with bat and ball, the Proteas have carried on from where they left off after whitewashing Australia 5-0 when they were here in the ODI series. Joining me right now to talk more about this is Jody Hendricks, the usual suspect. Phenomenal performance by the Proteas.
Yeah, Kendall, I watched a bit this morning, and I must say I was a bit worried after they won when the Proteas was dismissed for, I think, 242, and Australia ended on 105 without the loss of a wicket. And I thought we were staring down the barrel of a gun, but the boys came back well. They dismissed the home team for 244, and for me, the turning point in the game came on day 3. And like Ed said now in JP Dumini's innings, we really cemented his place in the Protea team again. And another standout thing for me was obviously the youngsters standing up, you know, with the likes of A.B. de Villiers, Dale Steyn getting injured, all putting up their hand and showing, you know, we can be, and also dominating Australia in Australia.
Interesting that Ed said just now is he thinks that going into the Hobart test that it might be Kyle Abbott coming in to replace Dale Steyn. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the conditions in Hobart is going to be different to Perth. It's a bit more batter friendly, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go with somebody a bit more versatile like Morne Morkel. He could be an option as well. You know, but if they want to go for pure pace, Kyle Abbott's probably the guy to go to, but I think Morne Morkel will give them a bit more versatility, and also think bowling with Vernon, that combination will be pretty good for the Proteas.
Would you agree with what Ed was saying about the standout performers? I know he didn't mention Bavuma, because Bavuma has really been out there. I mean, so many people are going on about his fielding performance that run out of David Warner early on in their innings. But it's been a wholehearted coming together of the team, as Matt said.
He took a wicket as well as morning. But for me, also, what stood out for me about Temba Bavuma was his innings in the first innings, the 51. I think South Africa was in deep trouble, and he and Quinton de Kock came together, got a partnership going and got South Africa close to 250. So his role in this test and that phenomenal run-out, I'm still trying to figure out what actually happened there. He had a really good game, but holistically it was a phenomenal team performance by largely a 10-man team performance, because Dale Staden didn't participate much in this game.
So would you say that we've got the makings of a team for the future?
I think definitely the foundation, and also we've got a squad. Remember, A.B. de Villiers has got to come back. Dale Steyn is probably going to be out for a couple of months. He's got to come back. There's a couple of youngsters. Maharaj in his first test, he did phenomenally well. JP Dumini is back to his fine form. So a couple of question marks about Stephen Cook. He struggled the last couple of innings. Also Hashim, we all know what a good player Hashim is, but also a disappointing test. But I think all in all, the makeup, if the Proteas carry on this way, they can definitely dominate Australia, and I'm looking forward to the second test in Hobart.
Yeah, and congratulations to Rabada for his man of the match performance. That 5-0 really was something to talk about.
Also taking a lot of pressure off Vernon Philander when Dale got injured. Phenomenal, and also still only 22 years old. Phenomenal future ahead of him.
No, very good. Now let's go to another sport of national interest, shall we? The Springboks were in action over the weekend against the Barbarians, getting a 31 draw. Not necessarily the kind of result we were hoping for.
Yeah, I was actually a bit disappointed. The Barbarians had 3 training sessions. They were a team that came together. All the players only arrived on Sunday and Monday. We were always going to expect running rugby. They're not the kind of driving ball type of team. It's in their tradition to run the ball. And we saw some phenomenal tries. Luke Moran, he had a good game for me for the Barbarians. And also, they put the Springboks under pressure and asked a lot of questions at times, Kendall, and that was a bit worrying. I think the Springboks, couple of players that stood out. They also did well to come back from a 12-point deficit to get the draw. Unlucky Pat Lambie couldn't get the conversion at the end to give them a 2-point victory. But, against a team like the Barbarians, it's always going to be difficult. It's not an official test. You want to give the youngsters an opportunity. You want your experienced guys to get form. It's going to be difficult. England's lying there waiting for us next week like a pack of lions. And Eddie Jones, I'm sure he started the tricks long ago already. He knows exactly what he wants to do, what he wants his team to do. Rated as the second best team in the world. But, again, this Barbarian team, I'm really glad a player like Rowan Jansen van Rensburg, phenomenal game.
Yes.
Pat Lambie is captaincy. I wouldn't make him captain. I'll play him at 10 though. And then also I was great to see a youngster like Snyman at lock. I think for the first time in a long while we have a group of locks that's really world-class. Eben Etzebeth, Franco Mostert, Louis de Jager, Pieter Stef de Tooy was nominated now as the South African, or chosen as the South African Rugby Player of the Year. Now another youngster, R.G. Snyman, coming through.
So going into that test against England, in a minute or less, can you give us an idea what it is that you think our coach is going to be doing in terms of the pairings, the key pairings?
Yeah, I think the centre combination should definitely stay. I'll be surprised if there's a couple of, maybe bring in Lionel Mapu, who's played a big part of the season with Rowan Jansen van Rensburg. Bring Brian back in at left wing. Sergil Peterson, for me, had a good game. I think he should stay at right wing. Maybe play JP Peterson off the bench. And then Willie Leroux come in for Jesse Creel, who's injured now on his way back to South Africa. In the pack, it's going to be tough because that's where the game's going to be won and lost.
Okay, now we'll see what happens with that. But a famous victory over the weekend was Ireland breaking a 111-year duck against the All Blacks and beating them comprehensively.
It showed that it can be done, and Ireland got right what other teams have been struggling with. The All Blacks have dominated World Rugby over the last 2 years, and a phenomenal team performance. It wasn't, I was looking at the game and I was thinking for one standout performance, but it was the team that dominated from number 1 to number 15. The subs that came on all played their part, and strategically, I think they outmaneuvered the All Blacks, and congrats to them, and history in the making, definitely.
That piece of advice that Rassie Erasmus gave Ireland going into that match about make sure that you score more than they do, and you take every single scoring opportunity, turned out to be exactly true.
That's what rugby is all about. If you have more team or more points than your opponents, you win the game, and that's exactly what you need. And Ireland got, I think it was 11 points, 40 points to 29 over the weekend, and that it shows shows again, and I've been talking about the turning point in World Rugby the last couple of weeks. Kendall, it happened in 2011 when New Zealand won the Rugby World Cup for the first time in 22 years. Japan started building for the Rugby World Cup in 2019. Argentina started becoming part of the Rugby Championship. And a lot of teams are now catching up with the traditional strong houses of South Africa, New Zealand and Australia. And by the looks of things, South Africa and Australia are struggling a bit at the moment, even though Australia won over the weekend.
Yeah, no, definitely lagging behind. Jody, it would have been really cool to talk to you about the Tshwane Derby and talk a little bit about Kaizer Chiefs losing out to Free State Stars for a place in the Telkom Knockout last four. But I think we'll be trying to do more of the same a little later in the week, possibly even on Friday. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you, Kendall.
There you have it, Jody Hendricks bringing incredible insight as well as very refreshing views on all the sports that happened, the key sports that happened over the weekend. We'll be back in a couple of seconds' time to bring you more news, more analysis. At the top of the hour, you're watching Newsroom.
SABC News on point with news around the world. Live transmissions to keep you informed. When history unfolds, we are there.
At which Clinton and her supporters painted an optimistic portrait of America. Statues of the woman who led the march to the Union buildings in Pretoria in 1956 have been unveiled against the walls of the State Theatre in Pretoria. Sophie de Bruyn, Lillian Ngoyi, Helen Joseph and Rahima Musa led 20,000 other women to the Union buildings against the Dompasers in 1956.
It is for the youth to take the baton that we have already handed over to them.
What has happened to South Africa? Kutheni my postcards.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Did you know that hippopotamus are susceptible to sunburn and spend most of their sunny days with only their noses out of the water whilst the rest of their body is immersed in water? Their noses have special flaps that close when submerged and can stay underwater for 25 minutes. The hippopotamus is the third largest living land mammal after the elephant and the white rhino. The hippo is 13 feet long and up to 5 feet tall, and the female weighs up to 655 kilograms. The hippopotamus is a grazer, eats up to 40 kilograms of grass at night, and it has a life expectancy of only 50 years.
It's 1100 hours Central African time on this Monday, the 7th of November 2016. This is the final hour. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us. We're broadcasting live from Auckland Park Studios here in Johannesburg to the rest of the African continent. We're also streaming live on YouTube. You can find us there. Now, this morning, we're asking you a very good question. Does domestic workers get a fair deal in South Africa? Well, we've explored all the issues. You can also let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. As you know, we're also conducting a poll. a little bit different. Of course, we're checking with you whether or not the drinking age limit should be increased to 21 in South Africa. Thus far, 179 votes, 68% are saying yes, please. 32% of you are saying no, do not increase the drinking age. Well, keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But right now, let's take a look at your news headlines. Water has been released from the Sterkfontein Dam in the Free State into the Vaal Dam from today to supply Gauteng with water. The African National Congress will hold its regular National Working Committee meeting later this morning, with the Public Protector's State of Capture report set to feature high on the agenda. In a major boost for Hillary Clinton's presidential ambitions, the FBI says it will not bring criminal charges against the former Secretary of State. Those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate. What's happening in the final hour, Kendall?
100% Elvis. Final hour is literally was final hour for the Australians out in Perth. Fantastic performance by the Proteas, and something to write home about and sing loudly from the rafters about. Good morning to you. This is what's coming up this course today. The Proteas earn a famous 177-run victory against Australia at the Waika in Perth in the first of the 3-test series. Of course, Free State Stars beat Kaizer Chiefs 6-5 on penalties after a 2-2 draw in the last 8 Telkom Knockout Cup match in Durban. And staying with football, Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool ascend to the top of the English Premier League after a resounding 6-1 thrashing of Watford. All of this in more detail later on in the Sports Bulletin at about 11:35. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Water from the Sterkfontein Dam in the Free State has been released into the Vaal Dam. The dam outside Harry Smith will prevent the Vaal Dam's level from dropping below 25%. The Department of Water and Sanitation says the dwindling Vaal Dam is forcing it to dip into its water reserves. The Vaal Dam is Gauteng's major water supply. The Sterkfontein Dam is the province's last line of defense against taps running dry in the province. The reserve dam was opened more than 36 years ago. Water restrictions have been tightened in a number of municipalities amid the persistent drought. Meanwhile, farmers have welcomed showers in some parts of the Free State as the country experiences one of the worst droughts in decades. 70 millimeters of rain was recorded in Bloemfontein over the weekend. But part of the eastern Free State, like Senekal and Kwakwa, are still desperate for rain.
A welcome relief. Even these children could not hide their joy at the recent rain that fell in the past 2 days. But for some, heavy rains means flooding, with some parts of Bloemfontein remaining inaccessible, forcing many cars to make use of alternative routes. But residents are hoping for more rain.
Even if the rain doesn't rain, the grass will be there, the plants and the cows are dying of drought.
Farmers say the recent drought has been worst ever witnessed.
The dam behind me is about the first time in 40 years there's no water, so that we can get water in our dams and in our spray turn things.
More rain is expected. The Weather Service forecast more showers in some parts of Free State, Northwest and Northern Cape. Ishmael Mudiba, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Well, we have to pray for rain. Now, EFF members have started arriving in Newcastle ahead of the court appearance of their leader, Julius Malema, today. He stands accused of incitement to commit trespassing for calling on people to occupy vacant land. The comments were made in Madadeni in Newcastle ahead of the local government elections. The EFF leader faces a similar charge for remarks made in Bloemfontein in 2014. Now, that matter will be in court next week. Malema says the charges are part of a political campaign against him. His party has also made a call on the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Sean Abrams, to resign. Abrams defended in Parliament the decision to charge Malema under the Riotous Assemblies Act of 1956.
It's a law that is being used to silence us, let alone our freedom of expression and our freedom of speech, just the basic fundamental claim of the liberation struggle. Land must be restored to its rightful owners, and those are black Africans. Until such a time, we're not going to be silenced.
Mlungisi Khumalo, our reporter, now joins us for a quick update. A very good morning to you, Mlungisi. Has Malema arrived in court yet? Mlungisi, can you hear me?
Hi, good morning out there.
Has Malema arrived in court as yet?
Yes, just to briefly recap to you that we are here in Newcastle where EFF members... Okay, sure. Yes, we are here in Newcastle where EFF members are actually here to support their leader, Julius Malema, who will be appearing in court today.
Now, has he arrived as yet to Mlungisi?
Yes, and with me I've got an ANC member who's here to join EFF members calling for land without compensation and expropriation of land without compensation rather. And he says to me they are here as the ANC to share or rather the plight of the EFF, and he'll tell us here as to why the ANC has chosen to rally behind the EFF.
Well, it doesn't seem there's a connection there. They're trying to sort out the technical difficulties that we have to get an update for us. We'll see if we can get that for you during the course of the program. So you have to stay tuned, and we'll go to Newcastle live in a short while just to see if we can get there. Let's move on now. The General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Dr. Bladen Nzimande, says that the party will defend the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, who's allegedly facing new charges. Nzimande has called on party members to intensify the fight against what he has described as the abuse of state organs. He was speaking at the closing rally of the Red October campaign in Sebokeng.
Closing the annual Red October campaign, the South African Communist Party stood firm on its position pertaining to fresh reports that the National Prosecuting Authority is bringing new charges against Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan, as well as ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe.
We are calling on all South Africans to say enough is enough. We are going to fight this thing in the same way as we fought to defend the Comrade to Change.
ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte weighed in on the state capture debacle.
So when people talk about corruption now, it must be a black person. And so therefore, we cannot say that the CEO of GenCo was corrupt, but we can say that Brian Molefe is corrupt.
The party has cautioned alliance members about corruption at branch level and has called members to humble themselves and listen to its electorate.
Door-to-door comrades must be permanent. We can't just do door-to-door just because we are going to elections. We must start door-to-door now, do it all the time.
The alliance hopes to launch a stronger campaign ahead of the 2019 national elections. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Sebokeng.
Let's now go back to Newcastle, where our reporter Mlungisi Khumalo joins us for a quick update. Once again, a very good morning to you.
Expropriation! Expropriation! It's an expropriation! Makosini!
Makosini Madala, you said you are here as the ANC to support and rally behind the EFF. What's the whole notion behind that?
Yes, thanks, sir. My name is Makosonke Mdlalose. We are here to show solidarity in community members, not really the EFF, because we are the ones who invaded Lavender Hill. We were not influenced by Julius Malema. Julius was nowhere in 2006. The municipality issued us with receipts. We were 35,000 in number, and to date we are 42,000, and we have never received land. And there is no place or area that the municipality has willingly allocated for the settlement of people since the dawn of democracy. The only settlement that was given to people, it was Section 7 by the government of KwaZulu before democracy, before 94. We waited for 2 years. We voted in the local government elections in 1996. 10 years down the line, we registered in 2006, August. We registered for housing. And it's 10 years down the line, 2016. We haven't received any land. We haven't received any settlement allocated to us. So we don't want a reactionary government. We want a government that is planning for us. Plan for us. We are overcrowded at our homes. It's out of desperation. Hence we invaded the land. Not that we are influenced by Julius. So this is not a one-party issue or a separate issue or an issue that will deal only with the EFF. But we are members, community members. Before you are affiliated with a certain political party, you are a community member. So these are societal issues. Let us divorce them from political matters and give them attention that they warrant.
You spoke of a very reactionary government. As an ANC member, the general consensus is that you raise your issues at branch level rather than coming here and publicly display your anger and so on. Was that process carried out?
Firstly, we're not angry. We're not disgruntled. We are the activists in this region, in this ward, which we're residing in. We are not emotional. We are sober. We are saying the government is our government. They passed an expropriation bill in February, the 23rd, on the 23rd of February 2016, that gives powers to the municipality to expropriate, evaluate, compensate the rightful owner, and allocate or develop that land only if it is in the public interest. So we think this matter, it's a public interest. Let us not deal with an EFF issue, but it's a societal matter. We are here as comrades, as community members. We're saying it's for the first time. We are gathered under one issue of land. And again, in saying this, we have no fear. We're not character assassinating someone. We're not a candidate going to elections. Therefore, we are not disgruntled. Even the councillors that are standing, we are the ones who are campaigning for them. We are doing door-to-door for them. So we are saying, since we are here, we want land and we want the issue to be addressed as a societal issue. And again, we're having a matter that is in court. It's up to this in Pietermaritzburg. We attended last week on the 25th of October. We're going again to file our opposing affidavit on the 25th of November. And on the 12th of December, the court will hear our matter as to whether the matter is moved to Matateni.
Yes, there you hear it again from an ANC member. He says politics aside, they are just here for one main reason, and that's to call for government to hasten the distribution of land and to give land to those who are very, very needy. Just to recap briefly, that Julius Malema is right here in court today. He's actually charged with the Rioters Assemblies Act, whereby he's told that he incited people to grab land that belonged rather to the municipality right here in Newcastle. Anyway, as the day progresses, I'll brief you so along, but the court proceedings have not continued in court. Over back to you in studio.
That was Mungisi there coming to us with that report. You must stay tuned. We will bring you one later as well. Now, in an age where children have access to social media and can rant and rave about what made them angry or who made them angry, did you know that you can protect yourself and your children against losses they can suffer by getting social media cover? Well, insurance companies have started offering protection against losses that you could incur from social media posts, a product called social media liability cover. Now, does the insurance cover everything from racial slurs, cultural and religious slurs? And what is social media cover? Now, to unpack this for us, we are joined by Simon Coleman. He's the head of commercial solutions from FHA specialist underwriters to give us the answers. A very good morning to you, Simon, and welcome.
Yeah, morning to you too, Elvis.
Let's start from the top. What is social media liability cover?
Well, it's really a legal defense type of cover. So it's the sort of policy that accepts that in the modern age, people are communicating in a different way, largely using social media, things like Facebook and Twitter. And someone may slip up, inadvertently post something without any malicious intent, but may end up upsetting a person or a group of people. And our law allows for people that do that to be sued by the injured person or parties. And that could, of course, mean that there's some kind of legal costs. And if the case is lost, there'd also be damages, which could be substantial. So the policy really covers that sort of thing.
Now, does it also cover everything, to racial slurs, cultural and religious slurs that we've seen, such as people like Penny Sparrow?
No, it doesn't. And as a business, we really had to make a careful decision on that, because whilst the person making those comments may argue that they didn't intend to do that, as a business, we really thought it would be against public policy to defend those sort of actions, even if they turn out not to be true. So we made a call and we said, look, we're looking at social media generally, but we're going to stay away from the racial or cultural and religious issues, which means, of course, you're left with general defamatory type of stuff. You know, somebody making a comment about somebody that they know, or perhaps about a politician, and then getting taken to task on it. Those are the sort of things that are covered by the social media liability policy.
So the policy itself does not give people the license just to go out there and say whatever they like to anybody they like?
No, absolutely not. And I mean, if you draw a comparison with owning a vehicle and the risks that are attached to that, you know, the minute you take out an insurance policy, it doesn't mean that you can start driving recklessly. And the social media policy works the same. It's there to say, look, if something slips out and you get taken to task on it, the policy will back you up and defend you. But if it turns out you're what, let's say we would call on Twitter a troll, in other words, going through someone's timeline and seeing that they're deliberately baiting people all the time, those kind of claims are not going to be entertained by the insurance policy. So you still have an obligation and a duty to act responsibly on social media.
So it doesn't take that responsibility away from the person in question. They must still exercise that at all times. But what does this cover now protect, really? If you just can give us you did mention some of it, but in broad terms.
Well, I mean, if you take, for example, that terrible incident involving the hockey mom, where a picture was posted on social media by somebody else in this WhatsApp group. Now, if she decided to take legal action, this is the hockey mom, against someone else in the group for sharing that picture, it would have defended that kind of action. So I'm sure the person who shared it went, this is really funny, let me share it, without really being fully aware of what the consequences were going to be for the poor woman whose picture it was. So it's really there just to remove some of that financial uncertainty, but at the same time saying, look, we all have to act responsibly, particularly if you have children that are on social media. You still have a responsibility to educate them.
So can anybody can get cover from this, and can parents also perhaps include their children in this cover?
They can. So the way that it works is SHA isn't licensed to sell directly to the public, so our policies are all distributed through insurance brokers. So an insurance broker would add that policy to their domestic insurance policy, so to the car insurance policy or the house owner's policy, and then it automatically covers the other members of the family. So the children that are on social media would also be protected by the policy.
And what is the cost structure, perhaps, if you can give us a ballpark figure there?
Sure. It's been designed to be an add-on, as I said, to an existing insurance policy. So it's priced at around 8 Rand a month for 500,000 Rands worth of cover.
Wonderful. Simon, thank you so much for your time and joining us.
Thank you, Elvis.
That was Simon Coleman, the head of commercial solutions from SHA Specialist Underwriters, talking to us about social media cover. Have you ever? You can protect yourself right now from getting exploited on social media. You can actually take people to court and they pay for it. Let's move on now. The African National Congress in the Western Cape says that it's working hard to stabilize the party ahead of the 2019 general elections. Now, despite its poor performance in the recent local government elections, the acting provincial chair, Kaya Magaka, says its structures in the region are more balanced.
It was a bruising election for the ANC in the Western Cape, but the ANC in the province says it's on top of things.
2019 is just around the corner. We acknowledge that, we know that very well. That's why we are starting now to respond to the problems that came up during our election campaign.
One of the problems facing the party, that of ill discipline, says Magaka, referring to his comrade Fransman. Fransman has been very vocal about his current situation. Earlier this year, he was accused of sexual harassment, a plot, Fransman says, set up by factions within the party. With a DC pending, Fransman says he does not believe he will get a fair hearing, and he refuses to remain silent about that, saying he has always been a dedicated cadre.
Under my custodianship in 2014, we've increased with 3%. In the last election, in one's absence, we've gone down to 25%. Those are the hard issues. I will never be able to keep quiet when there's a National Disciplinary Committee on one, and you have been promised through a letter that you will get documents, and the documents doesn't arrive, and you're being forced into a kangaroo court. Those things I will never allow.
8 NEC members have been deployed to the Western Cape to interact with residents and hear their stories. Fransman himself will be going around the province on what he calls a listening campaign to assess the situation on the ground and to try and rebuild the party here. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Cape Town.
Democratic Alliance leader Musi Maimane says the party is considering legal action following Parliament's failure to schedule their motion of no confidence in President Jacob Zuma. Maimane wrote to the Speaker of Parliament with a request to table the motion in the National Assembly.
Addressing the media after a meeting of the Federal Council, the party's second highest decision-making organ, Maimane said South Africans have lost confidence in President Jacob Zuma. He says following the release of the former public protector, Thuli Madonsela's State of Capture report, the DA had no other option but to take action over what he called the evidence contained in the report.
We moved a motion of no confidence to which we were tentatively assured that it would be scheduled on Thursday.
But to the party's dismay, it was not.
What we are intent on doing is considering our legal options to ensure that that motion is scheduled.
The DA says it's fighting corruption and wants to see it defeated. The party believes that by addressing corruption, it will address unemployment and achieve economic freedom.
We had 900 plus employees in the mayor's office, most of them politically connected, to come and do what was called public coordination or rapid response. But then not even once have I even received now a report that is coming from any of these employed people to show that there is some work that is taking place there. At a cost of 250 million rand.
In Gauteng, another discovery highlighted.
232 billion rands worth of infrastructure backlog. You remember very well the previous mayor spent a fortune during the elections, boasting about 100 billion rands that the city is going to be spending the next 10 years.
The DA says this is just the tip of the iceberg, as it expects to uncover more examples of corruption in the coming months. Lehana Tsotetsi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
A strong police contingent will be deployed in hotspots in KwaZulu-Natal during the by-elections this week. 10 councillor candidates died prior to this year's local government elections. The provincial government has appealed for calm.
Ward 6 in Newcastle, one of the wards that will be contested.
Thembi Mbongo, who was an ANC councillor candidate here, was gunned down just before the August poll. She's one of almost a dozen councillor candidates allegedly killed ahead of the elections in what is believed to be politically motivated violence. The deaths have given this community pause, with many living in constant fear. They've appealed for both earthly and divine intervention.
We plead with the government to bring more police in the area so that we can feel free and safe in our community.
We're here to assure our people as well that the police have given us the assurance that they are in all areas to make sure that all our people are safe.
The ANC has warned its members to refrain from violence and a call on law enforcement agencies to bring the perpetrators to book.
Violence during elections needs to be stamped out, and it's important for our people to know that elections should be about choice. It should be about the celebration of our constitution. It should not be about fear, intimidation, shootings and death.
By-elections will be held on Wednesday. Simpiwe Makanya, SABC News, Newcastle.
To the U.S. presidential elections now. The FBI says it stands by its earlier finding that no criminal charges are warranted against the Democrat Hillary Clinton for using a private email server for government work. The announcement lifts a cloud over her presidential campaign and closes the FBI probe over Clinton's email practices. The law enforcement agency informed Congress of the newly discovered emails more than a week ago, throwing the race for the White House into turmoil. It also helped erode Clinton's lead over Republican candidate Donald Trump in the final stretch before tomorrow's vote. At a rally in Michigan, Trump says that the FBI couldn't have received 650,000 new emails in 8 days, adding that Clinton was protected by a rigged system. The latest poll showed Clinton with a 5 percentage point lead over the New York businessman nationally, 44% to 39% support. Now, tomorrow we'll be looking at the story intensively.
New York, a hive of activity.
I think that there's a lot of hype, and when we went past the Trump Tower, there were people demonstrating, and I think that there's a lot more involvement with the public.
Yeah, I agree as well. A lot more involvement and everything else. But it's very difficult to see which way. You can't tell.
Republican candidate Donald Trump and Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton are both on a final push for votes.
And I'm supporting her because I think she has the principles and values that represent America.
Hillary Clinton is not a woman of respect. She gave away our jobs. This woman didn't care about America. Trump cares about America.
I would like to have the Hillary be elected as the first woman president.
I believe Trump is great for our country. We need somebody with the economic background. We also got to be tough on our laws. We got too many illegal immigrants in this country. We got to put Americans first. And Obama has lost sight of that. Hillary, with her email scandal, should be in prison for what she has done.
He's a racist. He refused to rent to black people in the 70s when he had a chance. He refused to acknowledge that our president was born in America. His vice president wants gay people to go to classes to turn straight. He makes fun of women's appearance. He called women disgusting when they go to the bathroom. He wants to keep an entire religion out of the country. He has made fun of handicapped people by mocking them while shaking.
Trump is a bad person. Hillary is going to win the election.
Clinton is currently leading by a small margin, but Trump is still hopeful that he will take a lead on Tuesday. Sophie Mukweni, SABC News, New York.
Well, there you have it. It's coming up tomorrow. It's going to be a tough race. And, of course, the voting will start. We'll have a visiting American lecturer in studio tomorrow to talk about the American election. So you have to stay tuned. So now, let's take a break and we'll be back right after that.
Young girls crossing our borders often find themselves alone in the big city of Johannesburg.
I came here when my pregnancy was 6 months.
Like many other girls from Zimbabwe, Abigail found her way here to the Central Methodist Church.
My friend who was raped and who was forced to have sex at the church.
I insisted that this needed to be handled with the police.
I think you don't have rights. You do what you don't want to do and you'll be forced.
Any refugee in a strange country is vulnerable to forms of abuse and manipulation.
I don't have any option. I can just continue to put the guys so that I can take care of my baby.
Now, the Public Protector's State of Capture report is set to feature high at the ANC's National Working Committee meeting this morning. Now, the report details how the wealthy Gupta family allegedly used its proximity with President Jacob Zuma to influence the appointment of some cabinet ministers, as well as heads and boards of some state-owned companies. Eskom's chairperson, Ben Ngubane, has lashed out at the former public protector, claiming that she released the State of Capture report without conducting a proper investigation. That report describes numerous calls between the Eskom CEO, Brian Molefe, and the Guptas, among other things. Anglican Archbishop Emeritus Njonjonkulu Ndongani has added his voice to calls for the removal of the National Prosecuting Authority boss, Sean Abrams, saying that his dismissal would be a step in the right direction in holding leaders accountable. Now, this was, if you can recall, after the NPA boss says that the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan's role in the so-called rogue unit at the Revenue Service at an advanced stage. And yesterday, newspaper reports suggest that Gordhan might be charged again. And finally, Limpopo was in the spotlight again with exam leaks. Our social commentator, Dr. Leonard Martin, now joins us to look at the week that passed and some of the major stories that unfolded during the week and how they impact on us as a society. Doctor, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Aldous, and good morning to the viewers.
First and foremostly, your observation with regards to the Public Protector's State of Capture report.
Well, Aldous, I think we have to round off now in saying that the report has lived up to many expectations. As to the veracity, that is subject, of course, in the final analysis to the avenue of the courts.
Yes.
But there are many indications, no conclusions, indications with evidence relating to some of the allegations.
Now, the ANC's National Working Committee is meeting this morning to discuss the report at length. Any expectations or perhaps actions from the NWC in this regard, you think?
Well, one thing that's very clear, not only is the state facing a crisis in relation to the report and what it raises, but it also places foursquare the issue of the ANC's legacy of integrity or culture of integrity, whether it has actually failed in that respect vis-à-vis the allegations. But one thing that's very clear, action will have to be taken. The report is there to be acted upon vis-à-vis the ANC's own strictures or corrections in relation to violations that impact potentially on the Constitution. So it's what we should expect is that the ANC to come out with a few quite hard-hitting issues relating to restoring its integrity.
Let's move on now to the NPA. There are calls for the National Director of Public Prosecution, Sean Abrams, to step down. This follows the decision, of course, not to prosecute the Finance Minister as well as two others from SARS. Your take on that?
Well, there are two views here. There's the view of Sean Abrams and what is happening internally. And according to Sean Abrams, he, in fact, has not violated or brought the judicial sphere into disrepute.
Yes.
But then there's the public sphere and the sphere within that context of legal experts who feel that he has failed woefully to do what was necessary leading up to the first attempt to get Mr. Gordhan into the courts. We now see that there's a second attempt. But the question is this not deepening the issue of the abuse of state institutions.
Now, this takes us back last year to Nene Gate when the finance minister was relieved of his duties. And do you think that South Africa is now on another verge of another financial catastrophe, seeing that we are back at where we are with the finance minister being again on the verge of being either recalled or even arrested?
Well, we're at a tipping point. Some people say we perhaps have gone over the precipice already. But clearly, the general interests of South African society are now foursquare on the lap of Mr. Abrams and the NPA. This is not an issue of whether one agrees or disagrees. The question is what will be the further impact to a very weak economy, but also what increasingly appears to be an assault on state institutions.
Now, grade 12 learners started writing their final exams 2 weeks ago, and Limpopo again in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Do you think that there's a sense that they can't deal with this particular issue of leaked papers every year?
Well, Elvis, the question comes down to the issue of management. Why is this happening almost becoming normal, that you have leaks of exam papers? It throws into question the whole character of whether these exams really, in fact, bear integrity. Are we expecting more leaks? We don't know. But clearly, management is culpable in this respect.
Now, we had a story just before the break about the U.S. elections. It's a big story. It's an international story. It's something that we have got to look at with keen interest. We're going to focus on that tomorrow as well. What's your take on the U.S. election, and what will happen if Donald Trump becomes president?
Well, this has been perhaps the most compromised within the context of what is at stake. Elections, the roughest elections where key issues of values relating to different sections of the population, I hate the word minorities, but large chunks of the American population have been assaulted by someone like Donald Trump. Great issues of values have been assaulted in this election. So, in a manner of speaking, it's an election to determine the very way forward for America as a unified society. Whether Hillary Clinton wins or not, I think much is at stake. My take on this is that the United States is at a turning point in this elections, because I think even globally, the whole world is holding its breath in relation to the outcomes of this election.
Well, back home, Doctor, is there anything else that we've missed out that caught your eye?
Well, Elvis, I think what's important is what has been piling up over the last weeks. We still need answers on what has happened in relation to the case of those mentally handicapped people. We still need answers in relation to the starvation that has now taken root among children in our communities. Those issues are still very much in need of attention and public airing.
Doctor, as usual, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much.
Was social commentator Dr. Leonard Martin on our weekly slot, looking at major stories that unfolded during the week that passed and how that impact on you and me in our society. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back after that.
Certain choices in life lead us not to our destination. Prostitution will not.
Everything that I used to do then, it was something that I never thought of, I never dreamed of.
One bad choice in life led her to another.
Most of my clients, they used to ask me a question, what am I doing in that industry? Because it does not suit me at all.
Her demons haunted her until she changed her life.
I used to pray that, Lord, if you can deliver me from these drugs, I promise you that I will serve you for the rest of my life.
She has since found peace and is serving her community.
We'll try by all means to spend time with all of our kids.
Join your host, Buleng Mulabati, every Friday at 17:30.
All right, welcome back. I've got your sports right here on Newsroom at the time being just after 20 to 12. We start our bulletin talking about the Free State Stars who booked the last spot in the semi-finals of the Telco Knockout after beating Kaizer Chiefs 6-5 in a sudden death playoff. Now, Chiefs beat Stars 2-0 in a league encounter in September, but the visitors got an early goal through Bogang Tlolane in the 9th minute, beating Bafana Bafana's #1 keeper Itumeleng Khune. Now, Stars keeper Telangobeni made several important saves in the match to keep his side in the contest. With the clock ticking, Chiefs never gave up, and substitute Edmo Chirambadare levelled the score 6 minutes before regulation time, and the game went into extra time. Thokozani Skotlong restored Stars' lead in the first half of extra time, but then defender Eric Matoho got the equaliser in the second half of extra time, and the game had to be decided on penalties. It ended 4-4 after 5 penalties, and the game had to be decided on sudden death. Stars scored their 2 kicks with man of the match in Ngobeni, saving his second penalty to take his side into the next round.
Denied by Ngobeni, and there it is, Free State Stars. Join Cape Town City, join Supersport United, join Orlando Pirates in the Final Four.
Now, Liverpool fans the world over are ecstatic as their side went top of the Premier League for the first time under manager Jurgen Klopp with a thumping victory over Watford at Anfield. Now, here are the highlights of this, as well as Chelsea's 5-0 demolition of Everton over the weekend.
Coutinho. Oh, and this time, yes! Liverpool do have the lead. Mane with a header, the deft header. Could be draining on the legs later in the season, you might think, but here's Coutinho. 2-0. Nothing wrong with the legs at the moment. Him again. Here's Lallana. Can 3-0. Easy as you like for Liverpool. 2 in 2 weeks for Emre Can. Lallana cut across, and there's another one. Firmino, he's on the score sheet as well. You can almost feel the Liverpool fans on the cop purring with this performance. Firmino, very strong, he got there first. For a moment, the cheat was on his man. He's in there again. Now it's 5. Sturridge, beautifully done. Ejaria, back here. Sturridge this time, surely. No, denied. Van Wijnaldum scores his first Liverpool goal, and it's 6 now.
Face to face with Williams. Eden Hazard has gone for goal and scored beautifully. And here is Costa, and here's Alonso. It's 2-0 Chelsea. Hazard, Matic with the flick. Costa! That's a dream pass from Pedro. It's Eden Hazard. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. How good are they? And Hazard! And Pedro! And 5!
Now, Springbok fullback Jesse Kriel has been sent home after he suffered a lower leg injury on Saturday against the Barbarians at the Wembley Stadium in London. Kriel has been replaced by Golden Lions centre Rohan Janse van Rensburg, who was part of the Springbok starting 15 in the 31-all draw against the Barbarians. Springbok management also confirmed that Jumbo Lengo will stay on in the Bok camp as possible cover for Ruan Combrink, JP Peterson and Willie Leroux. Peterson and Leroux both have niggles at the moment, which were picked up during club duty in England and Japan. The Boks start their preparations today for the test against England, which is scheduled for this coming Saturday. And in other news making headlines, new world #1 Andy Murray insists he's taking nothing for granted going into the tour finals in London. This just a week after overtaking Novak Djokovic as the world's top-ranked tennis player. The 29-year-old moved to the top by claiming the Paris Masters title with a 6-3, 6-7, 6-4 victory over American John Isner. He moves 405 points above Djokovic, but the Serb could regain his place at the top if he goes undefeated to land a 5th straight tour finals crown.
You know, I just wanted to finish the year as best as possible, you know, and then it's not over yet. It's been great so far, and, you know, I want to play my best tennis at the World Tour Finals. I don't feel like I've done that the last few years there, and I want to try and finish the year off on a good note, playing good tennis against the top players.
And now to marathon running, where Eritrean world champion Gimai Gebreselassie and Kenyan Mary Keitany powered to dominant victories in the New York City Marathon. Keitany won her third straight title to become the first woman to win 3 consecutive marathons in New York since Grete Waltz's 5-year run in the 1980s. The 34-year-old defended her title in 2 hours, 24 minutes and 26 seconds, beating her compatriot Joyce Chepkirui by nearly 4 minutes. The 20-year-old Gebreselassie won the men's race in 2 hours and 7 minutes and 51 seconds, more than a minute ahead of Kenyan Lucas Rotich. In the wheelchair division, Marcel Hug of Switzerland won his sixth major race of 2016 on the men's side, edging out Kurt Fernley of Australia in the closest finish of the day. And on that note, that's where we leave it with the sports for today. Of course, you will be in full knowledge of the fact that the Proteas are 1-up on Australia out down under, having beaten them by 177 runs, courtesy of sterling performances by the entire team, but standouts by Dumini Bavuma as well as Kagiso Rabada. More about all of that in other bulletins later on today, as well as over the course of the week. That's where we leave it for now. Up next, the weather.
What is the price?